Greetings, fellow armchair Imagineers. It's Tiki here,
And Blue Dragon 5.
and welcome to the Main Street Cinema, the show where we discuss the finer points of filmmaking. And in my opinion, all the finer points of filmmaking should be in CGI because that's the way of the future. All right, Dragon, I'll spare you. I'll spare you. So, Dragon, what is it? What are we celebrating? What is the momentous occasion that this is part two of?
May the 4th!
You see, it's brilliant because I came up with May the 4th. It's a holiday that was invented by me. Me, George Lucas. Yeah, May the 4th, we are doing, of course, we just did I Am Your Father, which was a very compelling documentary about David Prowse, the man behind the Darth Vader mask. Folks, seriously, check that out on Netflix if you haven't already. We just recorded a commentary. And Dragon, I got to say, I'm very happy with the way that commentary played out. I mean, there were a couple technical issues along the way, but I think the conversation that came out of that podcast was really, really good, I think. So hopefully we'll be able to measure up to that with this conversation. Dragon, this is a documentary that you and I have referenced and studied and just like called back to time and time again.
And we kind of embarrassingly realized that, oh my god, we never really...
Much to our shock, there has never been an official People versus George Lucas podcast on our channel. So, Dragon, I feel like, especially because with Celebration and the public is kind of more embracing George Lucas again, like, I feel like the wounds are kind of healing. I think this is a perfect spot to go back, kind of work through some of the issues. Of course, this is based on the 2010 documentary of the same name, The People versus George Lucas. But folks, we're going to structure this podcast a little differently than we structure some of the other recap podcasts that we do in retrospectives. What we're going to do here is we will be definitely getting into the documentary itself and how the documentary shot and whatnot. But Dragon, more so, I want to use the documentary as a jumping off point to kind of talk through our personal relationship with George Lucas and also how we were personally affected by some of the things that gets brought up in the documentary. So I very much feel like this is going to be a fun conversation kind of bouncing around between, the documentary and how it presents things and then our perception, like growing up as Star Wars fans on the whole.
Kind of build to our final judgment of Lucas, kind of basically walk you through, like, imagine Tiki and we were on a jury panel. This is kind of like us being kind of led through the life of Lucas and kind of making a judgment at the end of it.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, People versus O.J. Simpson, only it's People versus George Lucas.
It's the People versus O.J. Simpson, only without any known actors or talent.
Exactly. I mean, we're no David Schwimmer.
Right. So let's get into this, Dragon. Let's get into what should we call our segments, Dragon? Do we have any clever wordplay we could use for these segments? Item number one.
State's evidence, but I'm trying to think of like kind of a Star Warsian kind of like something. Exhibit. Well, I guess the exhibit.
Exhibit. Okay, exhibit A, B, C, etc., etc.
Sure. Okay, yeah.
Exhibit A! Our personal relationship with George Lucas before we saw this documentary, and also, Dragon, what led us to this documentary. So let's talk through this. You go first.
So basically, this would be a time we're kind of talking about kind of George Lucas, kind of in general, like our personal thoughts before we saw this, and before we kind of saw a real deep dive exploration of George Lucas as kind of the fans' thoughts on George Lucas as a whole. It's kind of like what our personal things, like in our own little personal bubbles. So for me, also just kind of covering what George Lucas to me was just. As far as I knew him as kind of, he was one of the classic directors. He was part of the 70s, kind of the 70s film school club.
The New Hollywood Club.
Yeah, the New Hollywood Club. I mean, kind of like the 70s kind of film school brigade.
Sure.
You could say, basically the pairing was like, basically like every era has like a rat pack of its kind. It's a group of celebrities who are really chummy with each other. Even like, with Like, of course, there's the original Rat Pack. Then you have like groups like Don Adams, James Caan, and Don Rickles. They all knew each other. They're all good friends. And then with the directors here, we get into bludgeoning New Hollywood, as I think it's kind of phrased. You have George Lucas. We got Steven Spielberg. We got Francis Ford Coppola. We got John Milius, who has also really interesting documentary. I encourage everyone to check out. Unfortunately, it's no longer free on Prime, but it's still worth.
I'd also list people like Polanski, Woody Allen, people like that in the mix.
Well, but also I'm just saying, it's like these guys were all like personal friends, like in a group of their own.
Oh, sure, right.
Lucas, Spielberg, Coppola, Milius. Those are the core four, and then you had De Palma. So there's like really five.
De Palma, sure.
I'm not saying De Palma's like on the outside. I'm just saying they all kind of built it.
I'm saying people like Woody Allen and Roman Polanski were kind of like not really in the social circle, but also very much in the same style and of the same era of New Hollywood.
And I mean, I think all these guys literally went to the same film school together. Like, they all kind of met each other at school and everything. That's kind of where they met. I'm saying I think Spielberg might have been like kind of the youngest in the group.
It is a very kind of Pixarian backstory, isn't it?
Basically, yeah, it was kind of their own A113. That's essentially Milius was the bad boy. Milius was the kind of the John Belushi. He was the wild man of the group, and then Lucas was kind of like the Ron Howard lead of American Graffiti. That's kind of how it went.
Was Spielberg the geek?
I want to say, and again, I can't verify it. This would honestly, in itself, this would make an excellent movie. To be honest with you,
yes, it would. Oh my god!
But honestly, I want to say Spielberg was either Spielberg or De Palma was the youngest member of the group. I want to say like those guys were kind of the new ones. They were kind of like the flounders, if you will.
So, John Lee Hancock, if you're listening, take some notes.
Yes.
You're looking for a new movie project.
Please, Mr. Hancock, please.
New Hollywood directors meets Animal House.
Yes. Seriously, Milius, and we could finally get the thing where we have Milius played by John Goodman. Oh, but he's a little. We have the youth ending technology. Let's use that.
All right.
Let's do it anyway. Back on the ball here. So again, I initially I knew Lucas through kind of consensus of two things: the fact that he was a member of kind of the old Hollywood brigade, of the '70s, kind of the new '70s crowd.
Mm-hmm.
And I also knew mainly as he was kind of the gateway of making Lucasfilm, which of course bred Pixar. So again, Pixar is always connected to George Lucas transcendentally. So I always kind of knew George Lucas through those two things, mainly through the Lucasfilm connection. Every time I grew up looking into Pixar and everything, it's like, okay, well, Lucasfilm, that's where it all started. George Lucas by comparison. Then of course, eventually, as it went with me, then I got into the big thing that really turned me on to Star Wars was Empire of Dreams, which of course was the was the making of Star Wars.
Folks, we were so close to doing Empire of Dreams as the other podcast besides I Am Your Father. It came ridiculously close.
So yeah, I just got into the making of Star Wars through that, and that's really where I got to know like the name I've kind of known. Again, Lucasfilm, I kind of get to know the guy behind the company there, and the rest is history. I'm just saying that's in terms. I'll go through kind of how I kind of learned about the negative side of Lucas. That's all the positive stuff. Lucas. So then I got I kind of knew Lucas is kind of the identifiable, iconic. We all get to know Lucas as kind of the identifiable, kind of iconic look that's parodied in Robot Chicken, Family Guy.
Sure.
Stuff. Mainly, like in Family Guy, like I remember basically there was the Robot Chicken parody, like seeing George Lucas in other media, and then I saw in Family Guy there was an interview on the Blue Harvest DVD between Seth MacFarlane and George Lucas. That's really where I got to kind of see the guy in the most modern day at that time. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, the Indiana Jones making of that's where it starts dawning on you that, hey, these guys, not only does he have hands in Star Wars, of course, he has hands in Indiana Jones because he was pals with Spielberg, and of course.
Yeah, he had probably too much of a hand in Indiana Jones 4.
Well, again, kind of like a hand with a rubber glove on it. But
right.
Indiana Jones gets a prostate exam.
A hand where it doesn't belong.
Yeah, that's Indiana Jones. The premise to Indiana Jones 5. Indy gets a prostate.
God. Oh, no.
Finger in the Temple of Doom.
Oh, no. Oh, God. Oh, God, no. Oh, come on.
Anyway, so Indiana...
I gotta say, Dragon, I'm surprised at you. I'm surprised at your lewdness. I would expect that from me, but not you.
Anyway... all jokes. We're looking forward to Indy 5. So, Indiana Jones... I laid out a really
I'm looking forward to Indy 5 specifically because this man has no involvement. No disrespect. I love you, George, but that's the truth.
I think I laid out a really intricate, really really awesome.
Oh, I did too. That was one of the occasions, Dragon, where I was just as intricate as you were.
I know. I'm not saying you did. I'm just saying for me, all right. I justified
right.
my barbs at Indy 5. I'm a champion at Indy 5. I'm saying, yeah, I'm rooting for it.
Okay.
Anyway, my point is, George Lucas also that's where I got like another kind of Empire Dreams experience with Lucas. Like, again, get to know the guy a little bit more. Like, oh my God, he's a really good writer with the original 3 Indiana Jones films. This is before Indy 4 was made, of course. Anyway, so I didn't see the flaws in Lucas until, all good stuff with Lucas at this point, until Red Letter Media, to be honest with you. I didn't really, I had experienced the prequels, which I figured when we get to the prequels, we'll kind of weigh in our experience with them.
Of course.
But essentially, I just really I wasn't really kind of woken up to the fact that, the prequels are quite flawed. And, we don't really see, what kind of the kind of where the origin of these flaws are until Red Letter Media, to be honest with you, because basically a friend of mine just kind of pointed Red Letter Media out to me. It's like I checked it out. I was kind of wowed, not only just the presentation of that, but just like, oh my God, I never thought of that. I never thought of all these issues with it.
Star Wars: The Phantom Menace is the biggest disappointment since my son.
Again, there's an opening like that. It grabs you. You have to keep watching. It's like, oh my God, my mind's blown. And basically asking these logical questions. But, so basically, all of that for me created a divide of. The divide was created for me. That was my last thing here. Is that the divide was created. We have past Lucas and we have present Lucas. Present at that time, of course. So again, past Lucas being like all the golden age, all the good stuff, and then the present Lucas being kind of the prequel era of like, oh man, he just kind of lost it towards the end. Like, what happened? He just kind of it was kind of how it lived. There was no gray in between. It was just kind of like there was prequels onwards. I guess you just kind of downward spiral. But then this movie came out, and then that view kind of changed. So.
All right. So yeah, Dragon, it's interesting because I feel like I have a really kind of not a personal thing with Lucas, but like I live in Petaluma, California, which is one town down from Marin, California, which is where Lucasfilm is, Lucas Ranch. And also Petaluma, California is the main town that American Graffiti was shot at. I believe I bragged about this before, but just bear with me. And so the point I'm trying to make is that
I laughed it up with the Petaluma Batman too, just to rub it in my face.
Right. But of course, my point being that Petaluma is very much a town that is soaked in the George Lucas. You can kind of feel the vibes of old Hollywood in Petaluma. And I have old school teachers who have stories of seeing Lucas, Coppola, and Spielberg having lunch in hole in the wall cafes and stuff like that, so
I gotta tell you, when you say it like that, it kind of reminds me of the famous Pixar
right? When they told me that, it reminded me of that. But yeah, so it's very interesting, Dragon. My view of Lucas goes from this image right here, which is basically Lucas at the top of the game, which we'll get into shortly, also to Dragon. I think I was probably on the bandwagon of this sort of George Lucas a lot quicker than you were. I was kind of look, we'll get into Phantom Menace when we get into Phantom Menace. I have a very interesting opinion of Phantom Menace. I had an interesting kind of I feel like I saw that movie at just the right age where it hit me where it was supposed to hit me. So I do have nostalgic ties to Phantom Menace. Having said that, oh my God, Attack of the Clones is among the worst movies I've ever seen, Dragon. Attack of the Clones is really the film in the saga that botches the whole thing.
It's really not good.
Yeah, and of course there's redeemable things about Revenge of the Sith as well, but really Attack of the Clones that was the bomb of Star Wars. That really was
the most boring of the Star Wars films.
I mean, Phantom Menace certainly took it in a different direction for sure, but one of the things I respect about Phantom Menace is just kind of the auteur theory of it all. That Lucas did what he wanted to do. I'm sorry. Lucas did what he wanted to do, and he was very unapologetic about it. And sure, it might have had Jar Jar, but it also had the Duel of Fates and the pod race and the cool sequence underwater with the giant sea monsters. So I feel like the Phantom Menace is a very mixed bag, whereas Attack of the Clones is just crap. So Attack of the Clones is really where my dislike of Lucas kind of started to seep through. And I think the fact that I grew up in this community that very much kind of idolizes Lucas and puts him on a pedestal kind of leaned into my cynicism for Lucas as a teenager. But of course, Dragon, the big thing is, of course, one of the people in the documentary that we get to meet did this short called What If George Lucas Directed Lord of the Rings? And he also did another short, which was a hypothetical Indiana Jones 5, Dragon. Or not Indiana Jones 5, it was a hypothetical Indiana Jones 4 before Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Well, actually, it was released during the build-up to Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. So it was released like a couple months. It was just kind of like predicting all the bad things that would go wrong with it.
Did they get close?
Yes, very close. Very close.
Wow.
And Dragon, I don't know, just you should seriously sit down and watch these shorts. There's one great bit that I'll quote where it's basically like they're doing an interview with Hayden Christensen for the role of Legolas in George Lucas's Lord of the Rings, and Hayden Christensen is just like, so George called me and he's like, Hayden, I need you. And I was like, what? And George's like, I need you to play Legolas in Lord of the Rings. And I was like, okay, George. Ah! I don't know. Just, very amusing stuff, Dragon. So that just became an incredibly quotable thing for my friends and I, like my close circle of friends, and just a big in-joke. And that's really the big extent of how I viewed Lucas, at least before this documentary. Now,
I'm just kind of losing because you sounded just like Andy Dick when you said that.
And I was like, "What? You need me to play Legolas in Lord of the Rings?"
Sounds just like Andy Dick.
Hayden, I need you.
All right. Let's move forward. Okay, so you were transitioning.
Yes, transitioning to how I heard about this documentary. Dragon, it's a very simple story. It's a very humble story, not quite as simple as the story I told last time, that epic quest of like, hey, you mentioned it to me about a month ago that it was on Netflix. That story
would never end.
Right. But this story is, I still actually have a mom and pop video store in Petaluma that I frequent from time to time. And this very day, and I believe it was probably 2011 after this movie came out on home video and everything, I just saw it on the shelf and it just looked really entertaining. You saw the this poster, and it's like, it's a very entertaining poster. It's just like, well, what did I do? I don't know what I'm charged with. I'm just a guy trying to make movies. So it's just a very fun kind of catchy premise of the people versus George Lucas. And so I gave it a shot, and I was just very amazed at how watchable this documentary is. And Dragon, like I said, I feel like we've hammered in the points of like what makes the documentary so effective so much that I really want this conversation to be more about kind of like the overarching kind of nitty gritty things that this documentary gets into. So really quick, how do you come upon this?
Well, it's also quite a simple story. Honestly, it's kind of connected to Red Letter Media. It's it's not just the video of them talking about it. I want to make that clear. It's not just they did an interview with the filmmaker, Alexander Felipe, if I'm saying that right. Point is, that filmmaker, they did an interview with him, which is really nice and kind of a neat payoff in the grand scheme of things. But I was, how on the YouTube videos they have like the other suggested videos, like the other kind of like videos that are under the related topic.
Right.
For that, just was watching like kind of the one of the, I don't know if it was Phantom Menace or not. Again, they updated like as new things come out, like new videos will be on the side there. The point is, it's from one of the Red Letter Media videos that I saw People versus George Lucas, the trailer, and it's kind of like the 3-minute kind of premise, and then I was kind of there was a link to the website because I was like so interested by this, and just kind of the idea of, oh wow, they're setting in footage for all this stuff. I was like, oh, this is amazing. I'm in love with the premise for this thing. I got to see it. And then of course it was like, it's like one of those, they take it around the film festivals and stuff. So it's not
right.
Basically, I had the weight on it, and I was keeping an eye on it here and there. And basically, I got it for Christmas, and I was like, oh gosh, it's so good. It was a really good Christmas watching that movie. Like, oh yeah, this is great.
Nice.
So let's see. So again, so I advertised on Plinkett, the website, Christmas, and then of course eventually the payoff is like, hey, did the interview on Half in the Bag, which is really good.
Half in the Bag. Okay.
That's kind of the story with People vs. George. We showed it to some friends, and they really loved it. It was kind of like initially looking at it like an intro, they loved it.
All right, so Dragon, we talked about our personal perceptions of Lucas, but let's talk about the public perception of Lucas, at least before the negative stuff kind of started to seep through. Like, I think this picture is very appropriate because it's Lucas right at the top of his game. This is, I believe it's like a couple years after Jedi came out when they're opening Star Tours, and Lucas is working with Disney. Of course, this is right in the middle of the Pixar deal and everything like that.
Yes.
And of course, Lucas is very much acknowledged as a brilliant businessman in addition to a great director. And I feel like that's really, of course, we'll transition into our conversation with that. We have a whole subject to Lucas as a businessman. But really, I do feel like it's very fascinating, this whole kind of like rise and fall of Lucas. And it's almost kind of like, I almost kind of feel like the rise and fall of Lucas, as The People versus George Lucas so eloquently kind of points out and illustrates to us, is very much become just as much a part of pop culture as the story of, Luke Skywalker versus Darth Vader. You know what I mean? Like the idea of like George Lucas being the scruffy nerf herder from Modesto who, eventually turns into corporate George.
Yes. Something to mention with this. So again, we're kind of going through like a trial exhibit. I guess is exhibit B or C at this point. If we count the exhibit C technically. Going through like a trial, and we're just kind of like following the character. Right now, we're kind of establishing the character of the not the plaintiff. Defendant. Right. So I wanted to make sure because I'm thinking of the signs like where the placement is, but yeah, it's the defendant. Think of the defendant. All right. Here, just kind of establishing his character, kind of establishing kind of him like the good thing before everything went south, as is per usual in the trial. I think the opening of the film, the one of the most memorable elements. I'll probably address this one. My favorite one would be the most kind of like detailed thing we'll talk about the movie. So the opening was great because the opening kind of summarizes the rise and descent of Lucas.
Sure.
Because the animated opening of like with that great dun dun dun. The really good music and really good. The movie has really good score. Really kind of nice thing. We kind of transition to some kind of good musical thematic stuff. It's in the trailer, but they kind of see it through the right moments of the movie. Anyway, it's a great kind of cartoony summation of the perception of George Lucas, which we're going to be going over here. So it's kind of we have the love fest, which is beat now in the past. Kind of the idea of change and kind of this new stuff going while he's like he's kind of king on his throne. All these faceless kind of cartoony fans kind of like following this wonderfully characterized George Lucas going around like frolicking with Spielberg and of course Indiana Jones.
Right.
Indiana Jones representing kind of the new stuff Lucas is doing, and of course followed by a direct backlash and like angry mob of these little faceless things. Again, I think it's a wonderful note to open the movie off of, and again, it's what you want with an opening scene. You want to kind of tease what the movie's going to be about, and I love that it doesn't give away the ending though, like kind of where things are going to boil down. At that point, we see love, we see confusion, we see kind of some scorn there. So like thematically, it's like it's the plight of Lucas in animation. So those are really great opening. So speaking of it again, just kind of the past when everything's all nice and rosy for George, kind of the heyday we're at right now with the image. Again, there's nothing but love. The perception of Lucas was there's nothing but love for Lucas and his work. He was the young filmmaker with an attachment to the past and a passion for storytelling. Just think about it. Lucas, of course, he was one of the best things about Lucas that he was Joseph Campbell's best student, which I always thought was like such a momentous. Empire Dreams, the way they phrase it, Joseph Campbell always bragged that George Lucas was his friend.
Right.
That to me is such an awesome, like the man who wrote the book on heroes. Period. Like we don't have superheroes without Joseph Campbell. Let's be honest. Mm-hmm. The man who wrote the book on it is George Lucas.
We really don't have modern day storytelling without Joseph Campbell.
Absolutely,
in like a broad spectrum sense of the word.
I mean, an argument can be made to say, if you're. I think there is like a legitimate argument to be made that our heroes now are kind of they're now so big they kind of are their own mythologies versus the taking from the original mythologies. But the point is, again, Joseph Campbell we don't have any of that in the beginnings without Joseph Campbell. Mm-hmm. So the point is, that's always been like a great feather in George's cap. That like kind of the master of storytelling kind of is giving George the ultimate kind of pat on the back for the record books.
Sure.
And with that said, we kind of George is also. Lucas is constantly he's always looking to the past, like the serials and the adventure serials and the sci-fi serials. He's always bringing elements of the past. When you hear him talk about working on Indiana Jones and a lot of the ideas he put in those films, they are reaching towards kind of like elements from the past, especially Temple of Doom. Temple of Doom is pulling from like kind of the not only Shanghai in the beginning, but also going to India. Like there was a certain film they referenced, but you know what I mean. It's like always deep cut pools for Lucas. Again, like definitely a student of film worked on these things, and you can see it. And it's wonderful how he, like Joseph Campbell, is he's adapting classic archetypes into in the stories that are going to be celebrated as they are now, and kind of the new mythology we're kind of going at in the generation we're at now.
Right.
And an element of George Lucas that we learn in this film that is definitely important in kind of analyzing his character and analyzing his descent, that kind of rewatching kind of occurred to me, is that another kind of pivotal moment in the film is when we learn that George Lucas was in a near fatal car accident.
Yeah, for sure. It's kind of those little things in life that along the way that happen that kind of shape someone's perception.
Yes, and if we look at George as kind of the Luke that became Vader, if we look at him in that capacity, not of course Anakin's also kind of the underlying thing, but let's just look at him as Luke for a moment. If we look at him as the scruffy nerf herder, that motivation, because basically the car accident was like he was near fail, and he really he was living in a directionless style, and then the car accident happened, and he kind of made a big life choice after that to kind of pursue filmmaking. That in a way, that big motivating factor is sort of that's his binary sunset. That's the Bruin Uncle Owen getting killed.
Right,
that's his, like, he has no, now has that big thing of like, there's nothing left from here. I'm going to move forward. Again, he almost died directionless. And like Luke, he's going out in the world, he's pursuing filmmaking, and he had to combat the studio system, the Empire, let's say, which importantly in the past year, it reaffirms George's vow not to become a businessman like his father. Again, another great
boy, here we go. Here we go with the like I said, man, it's so eerie how the story of Lucas shadows the story of Luke Skywalker. You know what I mean? And the story of Anakin more specifically.
Yeah, and I love, by the way, one of my favorites of the basically. One of my gripes against the film as a whole, by the way, just because I'll be mentioning a few of the short films as we both will throughout the thing, but it bugs me that we don't have like like at the end, either in the end credits or like when they pop up, we don't have like the names of the films always listed. It really bugs me because there's a lot of really great stuff there. A few of them we get like director of this, director of that. That kind of is the only inkling we have to like what film, what little glimpse we get of like an awesome fan film.
Yeah, I mean, I do agree with you, but to a certain extent. But at the same time, I feel like it kind of works with the stylistic nature of the film to kind of like, we get this broad spectrum of the Star Wars mythology through all these fan films, and I think
true.
And I think just by having them just kind of roll together as one piece, I think kind of makes a point. You know what I mean? It's part of
but it bugs me that in the credits we didn't have like like the image, like a still frame of those guys with like the list of.
Yeah, I could see that. Sure,
that's like the one thing about it, because we have to it's like a crapshoot figuring out who did what. Anyway, so Joe Nussbaum, he did one of my favorites. He did Lucas in Love. Have you ever seen this short film?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
It's really really good. Just kind of showing kind of like it's kind of a takeoff. Like, what if Lucas, what if Lucas actually was Luke? What if he, basically, what if we had all these improbable ways of Star Wars coming about? It's a real cute little film. Again, it's kind of like looking at the film school era of George Lucas, kind of running into the Star Wars as a grand. One of my favorites, honestly. I really love that they kind of. That's like the first major fan film we have kind of in the opening, if I'm recalling correctly. So just looking at kind of Luke's progression, I'm just kind of based on that, just kind of throwing a little bit of the film here and there,
Mm-hmm.
So again, he swears not to become a businessman like his father. I love how he used archive footage for that sort of stuff. He's faced with the impossible challenge of Episode 4. He completes A New Hope, which of course kind of fries him creatively. I'm breaching into a little bit of Empire Dream stuff. I mean, this isn't directly in the movie. I'm just kind of analyzing the man's characters. That you got to figure, it's a traumatic experience what he went through. He almost, he had heart issues on New Hope because again he had hypertension. It was a dangerous time shooting that film. It took a lot out of him. You got to imagine that kind of further traumatized him. And what's incited in that moment is the need for more control. He had no control, and he was always battling studio systems on that first one. So he's always been vying for more control to oversee things as time goes on. Of course, that fundamentally factors into what happens to him down the line. his creativity in his work is kind of going at where kind of our first act kind of goes in the film. There's again we see with the fan films, his creativity and his work has inspired parodies and fan films galore with things like a few name drops here. Forcery, which is the Misery. I think one of the best ones they use as a framing device is the Misery parody, which George Lucas.
Sure.
Called Forcery. I recommend people check that. Of course, Steve and I, we love Chad Vader, so that one, of course, we get a few points of that here and there. And we get Troopers. Troopers being the cops' takeoff of Stormtroopers.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, the big thing, just kind of addresses the structure of this film, is what we get purely based on the love and then the hard work that Lucas put into the original trilogy, is kind of fleshing that out, is Star Wars Uncut, which basically is the whole premise of the movie. We show all of Star Wars, but we show it through all of at least A New Hope through through like kind of like second clips of fan films galore that people sent in because they went into a Star Wars
That's what
website.
I'm saying, Dragon. I feel like the stylistic choice of the fan films kind of goes back to that project in a way.
Yeah. I'm saying you don't have this film the way it is without Star Wars Uncut.
Right. And I feel like in a way this film is kind of trying to play homage to that film's mosaic quality, if you will.
Yes, and if I were to speculate, I would speculate our guy here, Alexander, what most likely do is like, okay, I want to tell a story about George Lucas, but how do I do that in a kind of an inventive way? How do I kind of tell the story of Star Wars and how Lucas parallel those two stories? And then this comes out, the Star Wars Uncut, and it's kind of serendipity of like, oh, wait a minute, I can show the story of Star Wars in a way that's never really been seen before, while kind of weighing in. Basically, that kind of probably inspired him that, hey, with all these fan films, there has to be a perspective attached to the people that made these films, and that probably weighs into, okay, I get people's opinions on Lucas while talking about Lucas, who made the films. You get the people who made the films to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
I understand it's kind of an extrapolation, but I wouldn't be surprised. So let's see. So basically, in essence, here's kind of round as I think Lucas wrote kind of the the sci-fi Bible in essence. That's kind of what he did here. That's kind of what his big claim to fame is on all of kind of moviedom. Is he wrote the kind of the sci-fi movie Bible with Star Wars.
I feel like he did more than that. I feel like he wrote the Bible on just blockbuster filmmaking in general. I mean, sure, we had Jaws before that, but I shouldn't say blockbuster. I should say franchise filmmaking, Dragon.
Yeah, you're right. I think franchise is a more apt description.
Yeah.
I think like a franchise that is like kind of the equivalent of Star Wars beforehand. Like it's kind of like at least we have like a trilogy or something before Star Wars.
To be honest with you, the closest thing I could think of is maybe like the Sean Connery Bond films. That was kind of a franchise.
I'll give you that. But that one's kind of like it's more than like kind of like a trilogy of sorts. But I see your point though. Yes. Okay. Well, aside from Bond,
of course, going back, there's like the Johnny Weissmuller Tarzan movies back in the old days. They made like 1 million of those.
Well, the point is, in addition to kind of the franchise filmmakers, he's also kind of wrote the Bible for sci-fi and franchises and so on and so forth as this humble filmmaker, and you love him. And you love him for it. You love him for for building, constructing your childhoods. Basically, he's inspired. He's a linchpin of people's childhoods with Star Wars. He's inspired people's career paths, and of course, he's entertained us with these films. These are all the redeeming things that George Lucas has done. So again, going into it again, just George Lucas again, he always has a huge always has like kind of credibility of like, oh, he did all this amazing stuff, and we love him for it.
Right. Okay, but then, Dragon, in 1997, we get Exhibit D, the special editions. Hold on. God damn it. Oh, my God. Okay, so, Dragon, I have a very interesting opinion about the special editions, and that is that I don't necessarily think they're terrible.
Well, neither do I. I think some of them, like Empire is actually an improvement.
Empire is definitely an improvement, except for the added no when Luke falls. I think that's a little.
Here's the thing: it's kind of weird because there's so many special editions out.
I know, right?
The one I have, I think mine's like I have two. All I've ever bought is I don't get wrapped up in buying all sorts of different versions of it. I only have. I think we've been over this before. I have basically the box set that includes the bonus material, which has the Empire Dreams on, which we talked about, and that includes the re-releases. That's like it's the 90s. It's like that's the 2004 version. All of that's the 2004 version. I also have the 2 disc sets of the original trilogy, which includes the 70s version and the 90s version.
Nice.
So
Okay.
that's all the Star Wars I have never had to kind of get any. I'm saying, of the original.
On a personal level, Dragon, on a personal level, I feel very lucky that I was able to experience Star Wars for my first time in a movie theater, because my parents took me to see A New Hope, the special edition, and I did get that experience, Dragon. I got the whole like, oh my god, the Star Destroyer flying over your head, and because I had no idea what the hell Star Wars was, Dragon. Nothing. The only thing I knew about Star Wars was that my grandparents had a costume shop and they had a Chewbacca mask. So Chewbacca was literally like my one frame of reference for Chewbacca and Yoda, I think.
Oh my god, the bear's armed.
Right, exactly. So it was a crazy fresh experience for me to go into that movie, and I do have some nostalgic ties to the originals, because I did have a VHS box set of the original trilogy, pre-special edition. So I do have the comparison piece, but I don't know, Dragon. I mean, of course, there's the things that everyone's going to complain about. There's the Han Solo stuff with, like Han shot first. I honestly don't think we need to get into Han shot first all that much, just because it's just
yeah, sure, but
it's kind of a dead horse at this point. But anything you want to say about it?
Well, kind of build with some other stuff. But on the whole, by the way, I was getting out with Empires, like the 2004 version, I guess. I'm pretty sure that's the version. That one, the alterations to that one, because I don't know, there's this weird thing where maybe the original one had Luke screaming on the way down. I think
the original one did have Luke screaming on the way down.
Which, the 2004 version, honestly, the 2004 version fixes like a lot of those scripts. Just looks a little different than the other. It's better rendered than the other one. Basically, if you watch, stick to the original version, the 70s versions for 70 version of A New Hope, and then the 80s version of Jedi. The point is the original versions of those two, but Empire go with the 2004 version, because that one, it does not have any additional nose, and Luke doesn't say anything.
And I mean, really, with A New Hope, there are a lot of cosmetic touch-ups that really do work very well.
Well, sure, it's
mostly just anything on Mos Eisley that's kind of the problem. And honestly, anything that doesn't take place on Mos Eisley in A New Hope, I think, is pretty much fine in terms of special edition touch-ups.
Right.
Mos Eisley's kind of just the weird, problem area.
Right. Let's see. Because I don't mind the extra wave on the explosion. I mean, again, the explosion's still there, just adds like a little extra kind of wave thing. So basically,
of course, the biggest sin would be Return of the Jedi.
Well, I'm trying to think like what the right, yeah, of course, job again, similar thing with the New Hope. Basically, that first act has most of the overzealous alterations.
Yes, but also this is kind of getting into the 2004 version versus the original special editions. But I also feel like Return of the Jedi has some of the most offensive stuff with the, of course, like the infamous Force Ghost Hayden Christensen, which we talked about at least during I Am Your Father. And then also, of course, it has significance with I hate Dragon. I absolutely hate the moment where Vader yells "No" as he's throwing Palpatine into the throwing Palpatine down the castle.
Yeah. Honestly, let me address
that.
This for all your points are very valid. I'm just making a general point here. Is that we've reached the point where it's so hard to keep track of what's in which version. I know. Again, for me, it's 70s, 90s, and 2004. That's all I got.
None of the stuff at the end, except the Ewok song, was changed at the end. But of course, the Force Ghost stuff and the No was added post prequels. So
yeah. So let's see. Well, let me just just tracking Lucas here, just kind of seeing where he kind of fits it. Like, what would motivate someone to make all the? That's the main kind of crux of what they kind of look at with special editions. What would motivate this? So,
of course, and let's get into this. Just the big talking point here with the special editions is it's not so much the fact that the special editions themselves exist; it's the fact that Lucas kind of views the special editions as like the end all be all of Star Wars, and it's the only thing that he wants people to see, and he's gone a very far length to make sure that happens.
See, now here's the interesting part I want to track here, T.
Okay.
Lucas said, with the special editions, we're entering this point of does Lucas turn to the dark side at this point or not? Let's just say, basically with these, think about this. Here, of course, this chapter is kind of called like the Great Tinkerers, like where he's tinkering with things. Of course, tinkering it's an honest thing. We all kind of do it. We don't think we all want to perfect things. So, with the success and clout coming. With the success and clout coming from the original trilogy, like everyone's like they're singing the praise of Lucas. We're like, oh yeah, George Lucas, yeah, he's beyond Star Wars. I love this guy. Everything's going great. It's like, yeah, Star Wars. We can't do nothing wrong. We want more Star Wars. It's kind of like the general consensus. So think about that. You're in George Lucas's shoes. You hear all that stuff, and you think you're coming from a place of pride, perhaps, of like, you know what, I like my work, and you know what, everyone's like Star Wars. You want more Star Wars. Well, I can't really give them like 7, 8, and 9 for his reasons.
Mm-hmm.
But he said, you know what, let's re-release it. And again, it's in the vein of the preservation initially. Okay, let's preserve it initially, before we get into the semantics of that. He decides to improve it. Like, well, look, if we're going to re-release it, why not re-release it and kind of fix some stuff? Again, I'm thinking that trauma from shooting episode 4 is starting to come back. Like, all the experiences I so lost it wasn't in the moment.
This is basically where Lucas is starting to transition to, it would be really good if we just went in and touched some stuff up with computers. I love computers. And ironically enough, Dragon, I think the great contribution to him in Pixar is kind of one of those things that led to the fixation with computers, which is part of Lucas's downfall.
Exactly, and that's kind of they always have this bizarre yet kind of cool nexus between Lucasfilm and Pixar, because of course Howard the Duck kind of is the reason Pixar had to be sold. So it's kind of this weird, without Howard the Duck, we have no Pixar. It's kind of this weird nexus of the universe. But I know, believe me, it's kind of trippy. Anyway, but just what I'm saying here with Lucas, you understand where it's coming from here. Where without realizing the implications, again, it's coming from most likely a positive place. I'm just going to release things and make them better. I was so limited at the time when we shot that. Let's just kind of let's tweak it, make it make it a little better here, and then of course let's add some deleted scenes in. It's gonna make it a little different. But the problem, of course, is that he's not allowing the original versions for point of comparison.
Sure.
And again,
that's really where kind of the turning point was with the fans.
Yeah, we have a tease at the fan upset here. It's like a tease of these are alterations, and this is where people are starting to get conflicted. Like, well, they are his films, but at the same time, they kind of belong to the world of this. That's where the conflicts kind of, or how you feel about Lucas, which gets a little less muddy in places and a little more muddy in other places. Again, he's messing with something that everyone has a love and nostalgia for, and that's why this one's fixated on, because this one's fixated on and conflicted, because again, it's coming from a place of love, and you're kind of starting well, I mean, it is his work. I mean, it's still all the stuff we likes in there, it's just some stuff we don't likes in there now. That's kind of a little different, and it's the thing that's definitely going to be very important when we get to the prequels that's established here is there's a difference in filmmaker shows with these alterations, especially the 2004 version. And just all the stuff going past 2004, I guess. It's the question. Here's the important question I think is raised in this section of our Lucas analysis here, is that has success softened George Lucas's edge?
Right, and I think definitely. I don't think that's I think that's undeniable.
Again, the changes were intended to flesh out
I mean, one cannot deny that he is not the maverick filmmaker, the scruffy nerfer that he used to be.
And again, you feel some sympathy, because these mostly were intended to flesh out kind of the world, but also have corrupted the story a little. Which again, it's starting to take chinks. It's like chiseling away parts of the original to make room for something. You're chiseling away parts.
You have the brilliant. One of my favorite analogies is kind of like the painting over the Mona Lisa. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And again, it's kind of hard to tell how strategic it is when you have these minor and major changes, without getting to all the semantics of, I'm saying, we have these very small changes, then we have these major changes that change the stories, and then they snowball into memes like Han shot first, all that stuff. We get all these little things then kind of become big things, and we keep mentioning Han shot first, and all these all these running gags and jokes. Again, it's the big problem that's occurring here. It's going to be present through the rest of Lucas. The big problem is George Lucas is exercising his clout, trying to rid the world of the originals. That's him using his success to kind of, in a way, rid the originals. Saying, well, no, guys, you don't want. Again, it's coming from this place of, go with the better version. Go with the really high. Why would you want to watch the original version? It's like not like a place of trying to get rid of it yet.
Right. I mean, it's coming from a place of mostly just like he's really proud of the special editions, and he just feels very strongly that those are. And I feel like in a lot of ways, Dragon, like I said, a lot of the touch ups and visual effects in the special editions, I feel like still hold up very well and really do improve the film and the aesthetic of the film. It's just like we already said, like kind of some of the more intrusive alterations that really kind of rub fans the wrong way. But to tell you the truth, I really do think at the end of the day, there's more good in the special editions than there is bad, at least on base level, just looking at it without all the politics. And so I feel like in that way, Lucas, I feel like was kind of like a little hurt by the fact that people were receiving the special editions in such kind of like a mixed to negative sort of way. You know what I mean? I think that's what kind of led to the resentment and sort of the like, oh, well, if they don't like them, then they're not going to get to see the original movie. They're stuck with this version.
It makes you wonder. It makes you wonder how much of it. Again, I'm speculating on like the good intentions there. I'm just saying that makes sense given just tracking where he's coming from. It makes sense. It could be from a point of pride, but again, it's an excellent point. Again, you don't know how much of that could be like kind of somewhat of a vengeful thing. Well, you don't like. Well, I'm not going to show you the original. It's and there's also kind of a question of are all these little changes, whether like these aren't things that really needed to be improved, and it's like kind of like Lucas saying it's for the betterment of things versus, well, are you bothered by that? It seems like Lucas is more bothered by it than any of the fans were, because we weren't really missing the scene with Jabba. It's like, of course, initially it's like, hey, cool, scene with Jabba, but then you realize, wait a minute, it's not the same Jabba. It's in tone or anything. It doesn't feel like this. The same character. Again, good intentions that were. I just feel on the whole, and this is the last thing I really have to say on just kind of all the special editions periods. Like, it feels like good intentions that were overcompensated. Like there was an ambition there. Basically, it's like an ambition with 100% sure bet, which isn't interesting. It's like there's no gamble there. It's like I'm going to bet the farm on this. Like, well, yeah, people like the movie, so where's the gamble? And like, you're really ambitious. So like, oh boy, I'm going to change all these little things. Well, people are going to like a version of the movie. So where's the gamble? Hello? Hello? Okay. Anyway, folks, I'm gonna transition this to Exhibit E. Sorry, Exhibit E. Exhibit E, the money machine. So we call it the money machine. Basically, this is the merchandising chapter of our deposition here, or our trial, more accurately. So George Lucas, essentially, now we're getting into a part where, again, we're muddying the waters in a way. Where we're seeing Lucas is becoming more and more a strategic businessman. We're seeing here where George is actually one of the most brilliant businessmen to ever lived, which of course is counter to his initial vow of like never becoming a businessman. So again, this point where success is kind of burdened George Lucas. He is kind of revealed that he has like this money trap laid for the fans. Where whether it's out of vengeance or not, we can't really quite nail down for sure. I would like to think not for vengeance, but again, if you want to look at it that way, you can. It kind of darkens the picture of Lucas a little. That, like it or not, the fans, whether they like it or not, they're going to buy tons and tons of merchandise because they love the characters. They love something of that film, and it's going to be bought by tons of people. And that's kind of the thing we love. Another thing we love Lucas for. Or again, he, in a way, whatever we say about Lucas, the reason he has tons and tons of money is he is rewarded for the fact that he believed in the marketing, the merchandising of Star Wars back in '77 when no one else did. And that's kind of his reward. That's why he's entitled to all that money, because he believed in, he championed that first film, and he earned all that money going forward. He always went to the bank on these films, like Empire Strikes Back. He had to take the money out of pocket because he knew when to place the right bets on these films, because he knew they were going to be great. He's very reasonably sure these films are going to be great, and they're going to pay off. They're going to franchise, and he want to make sure he can make the next one. He wanted to tell his stories. So, again, that's always kind of his eternal rule, where he's always going to be like, rolling in dough. So, no matter what the fans say, they no matter what the fans say, whether it's good or bad, they got to remember they always say that because they loved it at some point. And then at the comparison to the film, which I agree with, is it is kind of like an addict thing. People are addicted to merchandise. I can speak to this myself. Less on Star Wars because I've kind of been smart enough to avoid Star Wars because that's an endless hole to get wrapped down. I very seldomly buy Star Wars merchandise aside from the movies. Because I'm down the rabbit hole and a whole bunch of other stuff. Like, I get the Jim Gordon merchandise. You get like Batman the Animated Series specific merchandise. You got to be very choosy with the stuff you get interested in. So again, a lot of it is the argument that's brought up in the film is like, if you were a heroin junkie or something, you stuck the needle in your arm at the end of the day. You can't blame it on the manufacturer. So let's see. So George, hello. Sorry, false alarm. So, what it reads as to me, just kind of tracking Lucas here, it reads to me that George Lucas's creativity is. Hello?
The computers have turned on me, Dragon. The computers have turned on me. I don't trust computers anymore. Seriously, that was really random. My computer just literally like restarted itself. Like, oh, we've ran into a problem and you need to restart. I'm like, great. So I hope you kept the lead, Dragon. I apologize for that.
We're into Exhibit E, kind of the money machine. So
Exhibit E. Okay.
Let's see. I use the addict analogy.
Corporate George. Okay.
So I kind of went into the whole, how it's kind of like people. There's always kind of a love-hate merchandising thing. You don't know how kind of sinister Lucas is about this. How he's kind of.
I honestly just think he's a very savvy businessman, but it's ironic because we got the quote about him not wanting to be a businessman. So, but really, the deal that he struck with Fox to maintain the merchandising rights,
that's his kind of his eternal reward for believing in the film when no one else did. Like he always is going to have money because he took the right gambles at the right time.
That was just his stroke of genius, Dragon, and I also feel like it was like one of the most influential business decisions of the 21st century.
Yes, it strikes me, Tegan. Tell me this sounds right. I think Lucas he's channeling his creativity into merchandising, and I think he's channeling most.
Keep in mind the merchandising was like a big part of the expanded universe and kind of like a big sort of first stepping stone into like getting all the names of the X-wing pilots and the characters in Jabba's palace and all that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I'm just saying. It seems like the downtime between Star Wars and the prequels is really just really ramping up the marketing. You're right, in the expanded universe. So I'm just saying, it seems like all of the creativity of the filmmaker was then kind of hit a dry spell, and that's why it's going to be weak and coming back to it. So all that creativity was really channeled into different ways of marketing things, different ways of kind of selling the stories you've already established, like kind of the fictional stories that that have been kind of spawned on the side, which is him slowly becoming kind of the empire / kind of the businessman before he's a filmmaker. Which again is you're right, the brilliant businessman, but he lost that. But essentially, he kind of lost that filmmaker mentality going into the.
He absolutely did, and he absolutely transitioned from like I want to be a great filmmaker to I want to lay a foundation for myself and lay a legacy for myself.
Well, actually, something to bring up that kind of connects to Dave Press, because Dave Press appears twice in this documentary. He has something really, especially after rewatching this, is complete serendipity, folks. After watching the "I Am Your Father," the Dave Press mentioned. I completely forgot about this. That it can connect so much better. I never watched it in this sequence before watching "I Am Your Father," then watching and something hit me is that. While Lucas is a brilliant businessman, that came at a cost, and that cost is that his mentality going back in the Star Wars, as we're going to find out, is through that of a businessman over a filmmaker, and that reads in what we give the prequels, and what that kind of connects to, as Dave Prowse mentions in this documentary, is that he mentions that when they got the Jedi, when they were working on Jedi, George kind of turned into there was more of a marketing presence. Basically marketing kind of
Ewoks, essentially, like kind of making the cute, cuddly characters. That was like the first step into a dangerous territory, shall we say?
Well, yeah, exactly. I'm figuring that at that point, Empire was just now we can actually make toys and we're just kind of having fun with it. And then basically, it would seem to me that marketing's taking precedence of okay, well now we're doing the they're doing the next one, and with that, we're going to have like things we want. What could be kind of toyetic? I'm not saying toyetic's not ruling the thing, but it's like there are considerations being made. Again, he's thinking more business savvy with it.
Sure.
You see what I'm saying? I love that Dave Prowse of all people is bringing up the guy who got the shaft with Jedi is bringing up being that I shouldn't say unbiased, but being kind of that educated source on like when things were. The only guy who's going to say when things went south on Jedi.
Of course, right.
I think it's appropriate that we get that then. So let me raise this question to you before we transition, I guess. Does George stop caring with all the success and money, with the porridge example, the whole he's got a whole vat of porridge. Does he stop caring about the material at this point? Is it again, that's the question we're reading to, like, how much of this marketing genius, how much of this money trap that he's laying, again, people are going to buy Star Wars no matter what. That's kind of like a endless gold mine, whether it's good or bad. So does he stop caring going into more stars? Like, well, anything I do, as long as it has Star Wars the name, people are going to eat it up. So why should I invest as I did as a young filmmaker? Is that the sinister motive, or is it just like he's trying, he just doesn't have the stuff anymore?
I feel like that's a good, let's transition into the Phantom Menace with that, Dragon, because I feel like that's a great transitioning point, because let's talk about the Phantom Menace. I feel like the Phantom Menace is the most, it's the most personal film that George Lucas ever made, in terms of, like, he put all his passion and energy behind it, and he wanted to make something different, and he wanted to make something that stood apart from the original trilogy, both stylistically and aesthetically. And for that reason, Dragon, my answer to your hypothetical question there that you just posed is no, I absolutely do not think at this point Lucas lost the passion. I think the point where Lucas lost the passion was after the reception of the Phantom Menace. I think that's really where the sour and dour Lucas kind of came into being. And that's why I think Attack of the Clones kind of rings true as the worst Star Wars film, is because that was kind of like done by a Lucas who was at his low of lows, who did kind of like stop caring, who was just kind of churning out a product at that point. Well, but Phantom Menace, Dragon, Phantom Menace is one of the most interesting films to me in modern pop culture, because there's just like, there's such a mystique about it. You know what I mean? Yes,
very much so. And by the way, we're in exhibit F, which is kind of appropriate. I'm sure the fans would appreciate that.
Appropriate. Yes.
Exhibit F.
Boo.
Exhibit FU, more like it. Anyway, so let me say this. I respect your view on that, TK. I do, but I just gotta objectively here. I was looking at the evidence again, speaking all legalese.
Okay.
But seriously, looking at the evidence, based on all the footage and all the making of, again, just it's really, you're right though. It's a very mysterious kind of production that way, because it's really hard to read. The again, Plinkett's kind of Plinkett Red Letter Media is kind of shown us kind of a view of this, and again, it's kind of hard to kind of separate from that view of, well, no one really looks like they're having a good time, and Lucas. It's either he's super nonchalant about being experienced, or he just, again, maybe he doesn't care. I never thought of until the rewatching. Like, what if he didn't care when he was doing that?
Yeah, I don't know, Dragon. Just the fact that the film is so different, right? Like, honestly, I'm sorry, JJ, but The Force Awakens kind of more feels like a film that is entertaining as The Force Awakens is. I feel like that is more of a film that kind of plays into the marketing machine than Phantom Menace did. And like I said, Dragon, I just like Phantom Menace was a bold experiment. It really was, and it broke new ground in a lot of visual effects. I don't think people give it enough credit just because of the sort of reputation it has just for the visual effects work alone.
Well, let me mention that to you again. It seems to me it's kind of like in the vein of, I'm saying it possibly could be, it could be in the vein of like how Disney and Pixar will test out the animation software for a short film, where again it's
right.
Like, now I'm not going to say it's the same thing as that per se, but I'm using the example of, you're right though, we do break new ground, we do get some really cool stuff, but again, the character does take a back seat in that film though.
Yeah.
And you have to wonder how much of that is just Lucas, like, oh yeah, I can do some new, I can employ, again, maybe the passion's coming from, I can employ the filmmaking techniques, but
I honestly think that's what it was, Dragon. I think Lucas was trying to make a more
kind of half and
visual
half
film.
Kind of half
yeah,
and half.
yeah. Whereas with the original, like, and I don't know, it's like with I certainly agree. Obviously, he didn't put as much effort into the characters in Phantom Menace as he did in the original trilogy. Absolutely.
And that honestly, well, again, we're kind of jumping the gun, so let's kind of save most of this for the next segment.
Okay.
But let's just say, I think when Lucas starts to kind of reinvest in the characters, honestly, is I think episode 3 a little, but. Anyway, I think it's when the characters are more kind of in focus and in line with things. But again, let's put a pin in that. Remind me of that.
Sure, but let's talk about the hype surrounding episode 1.
So episode 1, this is 18. I'm sorry.
Yeah, just from my perspective, Dragon, I have 2 very distinct things that I remember. Okay, I'm just gonna lay it on you. Okay. I remember that Taco Bell had a promotion for episode 1, and they had I believe they had Happy Meal toys and everything. And the thing that it really gets me nostalgic for episode 1, Dragon, I hope you remember this, but I'm kind of doubting you do. Pepsi had a promotion for episode 1 where they had 12 collectible Phantom Menace Pepsi cans.
Afraid not.
Yeah, but it was really cool, Dragon, because that's how I was introduced to all the new characters. And I vividly remember having the Pepsi can for Boss Nass. And thinking he was a really cool character, thinking he was a really cool design, and that oh, Boss Nass, oh, this guy's gonna be really badass. And then of course
you essentially were Seth Green from Seth Rogen, not Seth Green, God, Seth Rogen from Fanboys.
Essentially, yes. And of course, it's just I have that distinct memory of having the Boss Nass Pepsi can, and then being very disappointed in Boss Nass in the actual movie.
Sitting there drinking your Pepsi can with Boss Nass on, just looking, why, boss? Why?
When he does the whole
But then it's a single tear run down your face as you crush the can and you drop it on the floor.
And
you look away.
And of course, I want to truly highlight just what a good job the People versus George Lucas does in building the atmosphere. And
this would be the standout chapter of the film. This chapter really is Revenge of the Geeks. It's the third. That's what it's called, Revenge of the Geeks. It's the third chapter of the story, I guess.
We get all these interviews of people right before they go into the theater, oh, I've been waiting in line for 3 days. I've come all the way from Australia. There's no way it's going to suck. That's just an impossible scenario. Essentially,
by the way, that's there is actually it's sort of a version of Fanboys without actors, because all that stuff is taken from a film you can find on YouTube called Starwoids. Starwoids. Basically, it's about the journey and everyone being hyped up and in line to see, and even Kevin Smith's in it for a little bit. They're like fanboys,
right?
And they're in line. They're all eager to see Phantom Menace, and all that footage of them being super hyped and kind of talking to the cameras. That's all from that movie, if I'm not mistaken. So I'm just saying, if you ever want to see more of that,
and of course, I love how the documentary uses the irony of it's a tragic thing, Dragon. When they're oh, there's no way it's going to possibly suck. And it's we as an audience in hindsight are oh, you're going to be so disappointed.
Of course, this plays into Tiki and I's love of tragedies.
Of course.
And oddly enough, prequel tragedies, which just makes it even more on the money.
So let's see. Anyways, of course, Dragon, you and I were hyping up the moment for ourselves in The Force Awakens of the moment in between a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away and the Star Wars crawl. And I love that we see that in the documentary, just the air of electricity. It feels like you're at a rock concert. Just
the 1001, 1002 moment.
And
you gotta remember, let's keep this in perspective. So again, this is 18 years in between the Star Wars movie. It hasn't been a Star Wars movie for 18 years. Lucas comes back to it and oh god, it's where another Star Wars movie has been made. And not only that, we knew 3 films at least need to be made. Whether we ever went through the next 3, which now we're at in 2000.
Of course.
But I'm just saying at that time though, again, we wanted we started with 4. We're the first 3. So again, we're finally getting, oh god, we're starting with 1, which means we're going to get 2 more, which means more Star Wars, huzzah! And you gotta imagine this. I wanted just going through Lucas's head. It's the nightmare scenario for every fan and filmmaker alike, that all this build to this absurd, wonderfully absurd heights, and hilarious levels at times. It's just it's all of this build up, and after the crawl, you get that. you get that sinking feeling. It
Right.
starts to set in on you, and then you get that sinking feeling. Then afterwards, you have that sense of denial, and then there's that. Then the processing over time, and after multiple viewings, then you just have the rage, and then the either rage or disappointment. Those are that's kind of the way that
I can tell you firsthand, Dragon, the film that I experienced this the most with, two of them, one of them I, like you, very much disagree with me on, and of course you know what I'm talking about.
I think I do.
But the other one, the one that you can probably relate to more, is Spider-Man 3.
Actually, no. I had, Tiki, gotta remember, with a lot of movies, the way it goes, I don't know, maybe it's just me, but it's like, honestly, whatever movie I see, unless it's like remarkably conflicting, I usually have a thing where I always have the best time of the movie the first time. Then either things will weigh on me, or I see a second time, then I see kind of the chinks in the armor. Like Man of Steel, I was coming at it barely on fire. Like, oh my god, that was great.
Right.
Again, the first watch was the best experience I had with. Like, oh my god, because my expectations was like really kind of very minimal. We're like, okay, it'll be a good like Superman movie on the side. Like, oh my god, this could be a franchise. This could be great. Oh my god. And in Spider-Man 3, it was like, oh my god, like another Spider-Man movie. Again, the dancing thing was like, yeah, it's kind of weird, but then of course over time it melts it. Oh yeah, it really was bizarre.
No, but I vividly remember like the air of the movie theater was just sucked out with the Venom stuff, and I remember being the only person in the whole theater excited when Venom actually came on screen. Like everyone else in the theater, even though the air was electric in the theater, like when the movie started, everyone had just like tuned out by the point that Venom actually came up. And I remember that so distinctly. And of course, Dragon, I was the kid who was like in the movie theater like you, just really hoping beyond hope. Like I wanted this movie to be more awesome than Spider-Man 2. You know what I mean? Like I had the hope that this would be a spectacular fucking comic book movie.
Because again, like they had me with the Stan Lee cameo in Spider-Man 3. It's my favorite Stan Lee cameo. It's like, oh god, it's like, oh, yeah, it's such a perfect note. They had like things are finally going good for Spider-Man, right. Hooray! And then Stan Lee's.
Anyways, I'm sorry, we're getting sidetracked with Spider-Man, but
anyway, my point is, let me get to this. So, well, let me say this again. The only parallel I actually have with Phantom, as much as it pains me to say, and again, it's true. I never really had a Phantom Menace experience until this movie. Until I think honestly, Batman v Superman is kind of that experience.
Right,
I had that. Imagine I was super. Again, I told you.
Were you in the Captain Logan position with that?
Somewhat. Again, bear in mind, I came at it. I say somewhat because I rarely during. Again, I always have the best experience the first time I see the movie, but then again, I rarely will get that sinking feeling while I'm watching the movie.
Of course.
Again, I've always told you this, and everyone this. Again, when Batman's driving through people in the Batmobile, it's like
yes.
I've never had that feeling ever watching a Batman movie. Again, bear in mind, not in theaters, and not counting Batman and Robin, because that one would be more complex. But it's like Batman plowing through murdering people. It's like, oh no, it's not. That's kind
of the same thing with like the boring Senate talk mixed with the ridiculous Jar Jar Binks potty humor of Phantom Menace.
Basically, all the stuff you love the issue of Phantom Menace kind of, for me, distills down to like Batman driving through that. That would be that. That's the best way I can describe that sinking moment. Like my hero, the guy I idolize at worship, like, oh no, that's not.
Like, what have you done, Batman?
It's like, oh god.
The only thing worse than that would be Captain America mowing through a bunch of people. Could you imagine that? That would be just horrific.
Unless they were Nazis. I mean, it's. I mean, because again, we saw.
I mean, if Netflix wanted to go like rogue, like if they wanted to do like the, like Captain America, like let's just call him Captain No Name. You know what I mean? And Captain No Name, like he's been brainwashed by Hydra. And he has this yo diggity dog accent.
Oh god. Okay. Anyway.
No, dog. I'm gonna mow down a bunch of peeps, dog.
All right. But no seriousness.
I just painted Blue Dragon 5's nightmares. You're welcome, Dragon.
Anyway, you see what I'm.
Yeah.
Yeah, but even I came at Batman Superman again. I was relatively on it, but I did realize, that Batman company was definitely a flaw. I'm still enjoying what I enjoyed, but then of course over time it then kind of lowered a little base. I think it came out with like 75%. Then it kind of, as they went back to it, kind of lowered to 60, then to 55. It's kind of weird. I don't know. Again,
Anyway.
things kind of balanced out a little bit afterward. My point is back to this. So again, there's a process of which people are kind of processing all of this. Their feelings to the film. Again, it's to these. It's every filmmaker and every fan's worst nightmare. This all goes south. And now we have, just looking in perspective before we transition here, is like now we have this level of hype for superhero films, and Marvel and DC alike, and of course DC is usually more towards the negative, and with Marvel it's always like the level of hype of a Marvel film and kind of the level of like that sinking feeling you can get. Again, I don't really have that feeling unless it's like really
May the 4th, ironically, being the day that Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 opens.
Oh yeah. And here's the question I'm going to raise to you, as I kind of continue our trial thing. This will transition to the next part. Do you think George Lucas anticipated it or not?
Anticipated what exactly?
We have that famous moment that Plinkett's gone over, and also it's on the documentaries on Phantom Menace where he screens the movie with his guys, and there's dead silence, and he jokingly says, even jokingly or not, he jokingly says, I think I made a terrible mistake. Like, what have I done? And again, they're kind of discussing like, I thought this would be better, essentially, but they're it's joking, kind of like making excuses for it. And with that said, you got to wonder, after that screening, does Lucas anticipate the backlash or not? Does he anticipate this?
I think he anticipated that it'd be different.
But well, yeah, sure. I mean, it's a way to go. But still, do you think there's a chance that he could have gone like willingly put an inferior product out there?
I don't know, Dragon. It's a complicated issue.
I'm just throwing it out there, so that'd be kind of anyway. So speaking of the prequel, I guess the prequel disappointment is getting to Exhibit
G.
Yes.
Anakin Skywalker has to make the toughest decision of his life. What is the worst thing about sand? Just look at his conflicted face.
So I think just kind of getting into the aftermath of Phantom Menace. Maybe we might breach a few specifics, like of course the big JJ in the room, not JJ Abrams, the other JJ. I think there is definitely the hate for Lucas kind of begins here. Like the fan. Well, again, I'm not saying overall. I'm just saying in the moment, definitely any negative feelings on Lucas definitely surfaced.
It's less hate, and it's more just like a father letting you down. You know what I mean?
Yeah, just Lucas kind of drunkenly stumbled into your wedding. That's kind of what it is. Just again, it's Lucas kind of the disdain. Would disdain be better? It's kind of that disappointment in Lucas begins here. I feel this, and I'm feeling the flaws of the prequels do not purely fall on George Lucas. They were handicapped by the what I like to call they may have been handicapped by what Brad Bird calls the wood fire pizza success.
Okay.
The Incredibles, he joked that the reason he was going to shake things up Pixar like they wanted to, because Pixar could be enjoying the wood fire pizza. We just invented the wood fire pizza. We're just enjoying. Oh yeah, I remember he giving the pep talk to the Incredibles. Point is, he's saying like we're basking our success, you're going to do the same thing over and over again, sort of mentality. Mm-hmm. Basically, we have all the success of Star Wars. Anything we do is going to be fine going forward. That's kind of they may have fallen into that mentality. It's like why reinvent we're not going to try to measure up the Star Wars. We're just going to kind of tell these.
And of course, one of the things is, for better or for worse, Lucas did intend for them to be more children's movies.
Yes. And again, I think kind of the reoccurring flaw that I think, again, just with that famous scene from all the documentation and stuff, I think because no one spoke up or challenged King George. That's why things kind of. I'm thinking of that opening with him with the crown.
You say the price of my CGI is not a price that you're willing to pay. I'm sorry, Hamilton reference.
I think it shows that no one spoke up or challenged or challenged George, because he was king at the time. He was the head honcho. Everyone thinks he knows what he's doing, because a lot of the original people they're probably not speaking up during the credit thing either, because they figure Lucas has it as all in control, or again, a lot of new people on this because of the new technology they're ushering in. Mm-hmm. And we see, of course, as we've seen like various visual examples of the prequels are in line with kind of Lucas doing that original editing. He did, it's kind of the really kind of bland editing.
Sure.
So in concept, I mean, the prequels are really good in concept. We're tracking Anakin. These are the elements of story we did not get in the original trilogy that we wanted to expand upon. So in concept, the prequels have a great storyline.
They do have a great storyline. Like if you just outline the story on paper,
basically
you're right.
3 major plot points are in the prequels, and these are the interesting parts of the prequels. We track. The descent of Anakin, Anakin going from the light to the dark side, how the Emperor rose to power, and Obi-Wan's story, like what happened, how did Obi-Wan become the failed Jedi? Those are the 3 big stories, and we do tell those stories. Mostly, we tell them all in 3, let's be honest, but we tell those stories. And these are threads that we pull on through these 3 films, but, the execution isn't that thrilling.
Yeah, and like I said, Dragon, I do genuinely think that there's moments in The Phantom Menace, like The Phantom Menace, absolutely a flawed film. No one can deny that.
Yes.
I don't even really want to bring up the big JJ in the room because, again, it just kind of feels like a dead horse, much like the Han shot first thing. We all know that that's a big flaw with The Phantom Menace, right? Like, it's obvious. We don't need to really address it. But, I do genuinely think that there's moments in The Phantom Menace that feel like classic Star Wars. And that's more than I can say. And as well put together as Revenge of the Sith is, Dragon, I feel like Revenge of the Sith is like a modern blockbuster, and it's an effective modern blockbuster. Whereas I think The Phantom Menace was kind of like a weird sort of amalgamation of like new things that Lucas was trying to do, mixed with some old Hollywood ambition. And I do feel like the old Hollywood ambition still kind of shines through in a couple sequences. I feel most notably the pod race sequence and, of course, the Duel of Fates. Like, if you take those 2 sequences just on their own, like, those really stand up with anything else in Star Wars. I strongly feel that.
And let's be fair. So, I think if we're just kind of comparing comparing Phantom Menace to Attack of the Clones, I think the direction's better on Phantom Menace in terms of we get better shots. I think again we're more inventive.
There's actual location shooting on Phantom Menace.
Of course, I'm just saying that's the obvious thing to you. So yes, the location, we get physical locations which are cool. We're seeing more of Tatooine than we've ever seen. So that was a big appeal of Phantom Menace. I mean, again, Phantom Menace does have its dream of us. Now let's just not get into list making of like, hey, here's like the top 5 things. Guys,
Sure.
But you see what I mean, though. Yet there is definitely kind of a divider because all the stuff we've been waiting for, of course, is going to be in the last one. Is going to be in episode 3.
But Dragon, that's like I said, the point I made earlier. I think that's exactly why Attack of the Clones failed the way it did was because. Yeah. Lucas was trying his hand at kind of like a new set of toys with the computer effects and everything like that. And I think I do genuinely think he was stoked about it. I don't necessarily know how confident he was with the story, but if you look back on it, I mean, really, yeah, the characters are likable in Star Wars, but Star Wars has never had the most complex characters. And so I really do feel like Lucas was banking, of course, the infamous quote of like Jar Jar is the key to it all. If we get Jar Jar right, we get everything right. Obviously, Dragon, I feel like that quote's taken out of context. I feel like
let me put it in context just to kind of give it some justice, if I may.
Well, just really quickly, I feel like what he's saying about it is not so much the character, but the effect of Jar Jar. Like if the illusion of Jar Jar being actually there works, then we've got a movie. You know what I mean?
Sure. I see you're saying that. I was going to go a little different with it, but you raised a good point. I was going to say Jar Jar in terms of if we are kind of aiming it towards kids or a wider audience, then he would be the key. Like he's the,
right.
He would be. And let's broach Jar Jar, but let's broach kind of less the obvious negative. Let's kind of broach it. I want to raise kind of a question with Jar Jar.
Okay.
So let's say again. Of course, those broadly there was a lot of Jar Jar hate. Let's face it. There's a lot of Jar Jar hate. And I want to make this clear. I think it's less racially insensitive, but here's what it's more of. Here's the thing we got to address. It's more jangling keys that insults us versus
I agree.
It's like,
I agree.
And that's where it's really that's where of course he polarizes audiences. Like, well, more kids between adults. That's kind of what I'm saying. He's basically a lazy.
You know what, Dragon? When I saw Phantom Menace when I was 8 years old, I freaking loved Jar Jar.
Yeah, that's
I'm
the
not
thing.
ashamed to admit it.
The reason it kind of assaults kind of the grown fans because it's jangling keys that insults as a lazy kind of he's like a lazy C-3PO mixed with R2D2. That's kind of what he represents because we can't have the classic pairing quite yet. We're going to introduce him, but we can't quite have that dynamic. So we need to have a comic relief character basically, and also somewhat of a Chewbacca. We need kind of a mixture of our.
God, yeah, and you know what, Dragon, Jar Jar is kind of like a really interesting sort of like what if, because I feel like if they would have followed through with the arc that George Lucas originally wanted with Jar Jar, which was to have him sort of like what we see of him, like kind of like have him become like a more disenfranchised and dark and world weary character over time, while still being forced into the clown persona, which is officially like, that's canon, like what happened to Jar Jar. Jar Jar is essentially like a court gesture to the Empire, and he's freaking miserable, but he still like is cursed to do his clown bit for eternity, even though he hates it. So I don't know, Dragon, like seeing that route or seeing like a more sort of like Han Solo type Jar Jar where he's not jokey, you know what I mean? And where he's kind of more of like the original version of Han Solo, of course, was going to be an alien. So if we saw more of that character, it's a really like I said, it's a really interesting what if, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. Let me ask you this. So I think just broaching kind of like having the kids' reaction to the prequels in general, because I think the film, if the prequels are targeted towards children, it's like this. The film, basically, as far as children are concerned, there's no 18-year wait in between Star Wars films. There's no anticipation. There's no measuring it between them. Basically, it's all Star Wars to kids. That's kind of the point the documentary also makes. It's all Star Wars to kids. Like kids, we see some kids and their parents are seeing kind of like the divide is between them. Like, well, we like this better, but you're not going to tell it. You're not going to walk up to a kid and say what you like is stupid. Unless you're Simon Pegg. Simon Pegg's not afraid to do that, but
my dad absolutely had that dilemma the first time we saw Phantom Menace, because I really, really like Phantom Menace the first time I walked out of the theater. And my dad was like,
my kid loves Jar Jar. My kid loves Jar Jar. I failed as a parent.
Exactly. Pretty much.
Honey, is it okay to hate my son?
Oh, God. I mean, look, like when I became a teenager, I very quickly turned on Jar Jar, right? It wasn't like, I'm just saying, like, in the moment, the first time I saw it, I was like, oh, he's funny. He makes me laugh.
Honestly, what it boils down to the divide is, it's kind of the classic and cerebral of the originals versus the action spectacle of the prequels. And that's kind of, if the focus is on kids, that's where that divide is.
Mm.
We're trying to kind of just entertain more than that, but at the same time, we do kind of slow things down for plot. It's like we're trying to also play to the adults, and that's where things are really they're becoming a mixed bag.
Sure.
Let's see. Of course,
like I said, man, I could just like I could tear Attack of the Clones a new one. I just think that's a horrible movie. Like far, far, far more irredeemable than either Phantom Menace or Revenge of the Sith.
So, of course, it's just in the way it's broached in the film. Of course, we have the prequel section of the film, just the big night of Phantom Menace and onward with the prequels. Of course, prequels it's a very memorable part of the film. It's the prequel bashing and everything. Of course, you have various over the top reactions. It's where the humor is kind of coming from. And you got to remember, I think what they're broaching with that. I love how Neil Gaiman points out, fans have no say, and that's only fair. Of course, they can't tell you how you write your book and how you write your characters.
Kind of like the point I'm trying to make with George's view of the Phantom Menace and what he was going for. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I like that we're addressing that. Like we basically the fans, we all kind of asked for. And I like that this is also addressing the thing. We addressed that. We asked for a miracle with episode 1, which is not possible. There's no way you can experience a New Hope.
Mm-hmm, exactly.
Going back to it, it was asking for a miracle.
This ain't going to be 1977.
Yeah, I mean, let's face it. Just broadly again, like Force Awakens is kind of a different because that's moving forward. That's not exactly fair. This is like revisiting Star Wars, and this is like again telling the long lost chapters. And I think this is the big disadvantage the prequel has. And I think this is kind of where all the prequel's just general failing is as a whole. And it's not just like going all the negative things. I'm saying broadly is that I think again, this is the way it kind of communicates in all the making of stuff we see, is that George Lucas kind of casually, again, it might just be playing up for fun. It's kind of hard to tell. He's just kind of casually writing out the films, and I feel he's writing them because he feels he has to, versus he wants to tell the first 3 chapters. And I think that's
like, like I said, I think that transition came around on Attack of the Clones, and I feel like we're kind of running in circles with this conversation a little bit, so we might want to transition soon.
Okay, let me see if I can massage out the transition with a few more points.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't mean to like undermine you, but I'm just saying, like, I'm kind of going back to the same point. Like, like I don't necessarily think his disenfranchisement with the storytelling came in episode 1. I think more episode 1, he was like kind of a kid in the candy store with the computer effects, and story might have taken a back seat, but he was very enthused about it still. I think episode 2 is very much where he's like, the fans don't like me, so why should I put any effort into this? I'm just gonna crap out whatever I can crap out.
Right. It's briefly just kind of one of the big things about Attack of the Clones, because again we kind of skirting around. Like one big thing to hit on Attack of the Clones, with the CG in general.
Other than the fact that Hayden Christensen is a terrible actor.
Well, again, he's better in the 3rd one, but yeah, in 2 he's horrible. But my point is with the CG as a whole, which is very, very prevalent in Attack of the Clones, most prevalent.
It looks bad, man. It has not aged well at all.
It has not at all. You're right.
Like I think some of the stuff from Phantom Menace definitely holds up. The pod race holds up, but the Attack of the Clone stuff, it just looks like a video game to me.
Of course, because with Tatooine, you have like really worn down machines. So if it doesn't look fancy, you need to render it to a degree. When you render too much on like these really clean crystalline environments, then it shows.
That's the problem. I feel like that was the big problem with Attack of the Clones, Dragon, is the crystalline environments and just the atmosphere. It just all felt off. You know what I mean? Like when Obi-Wan goes for as off as Phantom Menace might have felt, I still feel like Phantom Menace, like there was a place in the Star Wars mythology for it, and it made sense that like since this was like pre-war, that it'd be a little bit more sleek. But this, it just feels like a different universe, like even more so. It's just like it's hard, like, and of course, I still think one of the biggest middle fingers in the whole prequel trilogy is like the 50s primetime diner. You know what I mean? Like the 1950s diner.
And let's say
thinking with that.
Well, what I'm kind of breaching upon here is I think the CG is kind of a symbol of Star Wars with too much control. It's like it's becoming what you're fighting against. It's becoming kind of you're the winner now, and now you're just kind of like you're basking in the spoils more than you should. Like now we don't care about our character anymore because he's basking in success. There's nothing really to root for. Now we're envious of him, and now we're envious of him. We're like.
Pointless story.
It's like it is a really deranged comparison. It's not deranged. It's a really strange comparison. Might as well be deranged. It's really out there. It's like in the episode of the Rugrats where Chucky becomes rich, and then everyone's Chaz and Chucky become rich, and then the rest of the Rugrats they really just like Tommy and Stu. They really just kind of they can't recognize their friend anymore. It's kind of that's kind of the experience where it's like what if we follow it now. Lucas has every tool and toy in the toy box, but now where's the enjoyment? Like where's now he's kind of Superman. He has all the powers. Where's the where's the intrigue? Where's the challenge? Where's we're rooting for this film to be complete. We're rooting for the story to pay off. We care about our characters. We don't care about our characters because it all comes too easy to them. Mm-hmm. And I guess last thing to hit on the previous is that actually Mark Hamill he is someone who does not like this film.
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
He revealed that this year. He revealed that basically they approached, I shouldn't say he was never on board for this one because they approached him for an interview and he declined. I'm not going to say I don't know if he politely or impolitely declined, but he declined it because he felt it just, I hope it wasn't just based on the title, but it probably was, and you can't really help that. It's he felt it was going to be too biased against George Lucas and the prequels, which again Mark Hamill was a defender of George Lucas and the prequels, and the prequels are their own story, I guess, and he's just kind of he's not going to outright say they're bad. He always thinks people overreact about the prequels. So I'm saying even the great and powerful Mark Hamill, he's a defender of the prequels and Lucas's character on the prequels. So we should always keep that in mind. Let's not just let's not be the cool kids and just say the prequels stink. Again,
Dragon,
so,
remind me, when are we supposed to be transitioning to Revenge of the Sith? Is that now or?
yeah, we're just in general. We're talking about all the prequels now, so it's
Okay,
kind
I
of,
mean, Revenge of the Sith is obviously the least flawed of the three. I still think there's some major problems with it.
yeah. Again, this is like all this is the payoff to like these are again the crux of the three stories we need to tell are all in this movie essentially.
Mhm. I mean, I think one of the big problems I have with Revenge of the Sith, I don't think I like. I really wish General Grievous was the villain of Episode 2 instead of Count Dooku.
Yeah,
Count
I think
Dooku kind of feels pointless. Like I wish they would have built up Grievous more.
I think you're right. But even though again Count Dooku was kind of well cast and well performed when he was there. Of course,
It's
Christopher Lee.
Christopher Lee, so yeah, of course he's going to
Yeah.
give a good performance, but that doesn't mean it's a compelling character.
I mean, you're right. I'm just saying again, it was like a good casting for him. It was like kind of cool to see him there.
Sure.
But
But anyways, I just feel like Revenge of the Sith it's solid. It's
for my
just,
money, it's the best of the prequels. For me, for me personally, I get the
I
most
still
enjoyment
kind
out
of
of.
way back and forth between I think Duel of Fates is probably the best overall sequence in the prequel trilogy.
I understand your points on that, T. I'm just saying again, I like the pathos and I with the most characterization in Sith. That's where it comes down for me. Like I can,
yeah, I won't deny that. And
it's like for me,
we do get closer to kind of like classic C-3PO, classic Yoda. You know what I mean?
it's like
Classic
basically.
Obi-Wan.
Well, let me fire through a few points on Sith of why Sith what could be improved on Sith. It's that I feel Sith is actually I think Sith is a good movie, but we meander a little bit here and there. We kind of like
The cheap scene is pure fan service and doesn't need to be there at all.
I said if we edited parts out, or basically if we sped up Sith in places, because it goes on too long. The problem is the movie's too long. We extend things like the lightsaber battle in Mustafar is cool.
The lightsaber battle is a big problem.
That's what I'm saying. That seriously,
that's a fucking video game right there.
But you see what I'm saying, though. That's the key flaw of the film. Like we go on too long with these, and that the movie goes on too long in places. If you cut out or speed through parts of the movie, it's actually it's good. It's a good story. And again, it hits upon my thing with all the prequels that feels
and
like
it does have legitimately one of the best scenes in the entire saga, I think, which is the opera scene.
That is a really good scene. Yes.
Yeah. I think that scene holds up with any of the original Star Wars stuff.
Yes, and with that, it's again this all the stuff. Honestly, all the plot points in Revenge of the large majority of the plot points. Again, basically, you speed through and get rid of it. It's pretty much. I think it's all there. I think we get legitimately good stuff there because we're not really bored with any of the Senate stuff. It's again, it's all very plot. So again, we have actual characters we're caring about. Anakin has a problem because he learns she's pregnant. The Jedi's frown upon that. But again, if we just kind of sped through a few, I don't know if you keep repeating. I'm just trying to get to my point is this episode 3 felt like Lucas actually sat down. He wrote the chapter of a story he wanted to tell. Like this is like, okay, this is the
Dragon. I feel like a lot of people agree that episode 3 really it kind of feels like the only one that's actually necessary.
Yes, it feels like an actual Star Wars movie versus again the other ones like Phantom Menace does start us off in a place where we need that for sort of okay. Anakin started off in Luke's position. We need that part of it, yes. And he had a mentor. Okay, I get that he meets Obi-Wan. Okay, those are plot points that could feed into the rest of it. But again, if we made him older, like in 2, again, I don't want to get into like the what ifs. But you see what I'm saying? The other ones felt like these were filler to get us to this point. And this point, it felt like an actual like kind of chapter of Lucas. All those key plot points he wanted to pay it off were in Sith, but everything else is like these are just like things he's kind of jotted down real quick, and they were made into a movie. Like, well, I need to make a movie so I can tell like the big payoff. And like honestly, again, for me, the Star Wars movies I want to see honestly were 3, and then the stuff in between 3 and 4. Those are the Star Wars which we kind of got with Rogue One.
We kind of got that, yeah.
I've always said 3.5, which we get at the end of this movie, like 3.5 will be really great. That's the movie I want.
I also think the Obi-Wan movie. Come on, exactly. It's got to happen.
I've always been pitching that movie and basically doing a Shane with Obi-Wan.
And of course, now with the success of Logan, I feel like it's basically like that's Hollywood's sign. Like
basically, Shane meets Godfather in space, and you have the Obi-Wan. that's it. Okay, let's see. So again, let's see. I don't think there's anything else we need to cover with.
I mean, I know you defend it, but I still think the no is pretty laughable.
Yeah, I'll defend no. I will because it's all the tragedy of Vader being paid off. I think all of that stuff. I think again, if we sped through a few things, that's my main gripe of the whole movie. Again, it's good stuff. Just let's lose some of the unnecessary stuff. Let's lose the very long, slow walk when Anakin tells Mace Windu, "Hey, it's Palpatine's up to some nasty stuff. Let's just walk." Because the treadmills won't allow us to run.
The Aaron Sorkin walk and talk, it is not.
That's what I'm saying. Like that's the only equivalent we really had to all the slow paced senator scenes, like all the Senate scenes. Anyway, but yeah, on the whole, it's kind of where it stands. You know, it's there, of course, there's the big mind game question of if they used to relate to Lucas so we can move forward. Is that this transition to the next one? Is that with Jar Jar does represent one important symbol of the prequels. There's a question of a power of a power dominance thing. If Lucas is Jar Jar's kind of a symbol of the power Lucas is putting in front of people. Like the fans aren't crazy about the prequels, yet Jar Jar keeps showing up, and they address this in the film. It's a really cool bit where
Jar Jar. To be fair, like yeah, you're right. Like Jar Jar, like he shows up and he kind of like winks to the camera, but. I mean,
that's a mind game right there. It's kind of a power that could be interpreted as a power move.
I don't think it's a power move, really. I think it's more just kind of like Lucas making fun of himself more than anything else.
Which, again, that's the other side of the argument where we know.
I don't know. Maybe this is like perhaps one of the flaws of the movie for me is that I feel like at times it is a little bit too anti-Lucas, and it is maybe a little bit kind of like conspiracy theory kind of laid in a way. Like
I disagree with that because in that same section, the minute we bring that up, we have a writer from Clone Wars bring up that George Lucas does have a sense of humor about the Jar Jar stuff, which again it raises kind of that.
That's what I'm saying. It's a sense of humor, Dragon. That's exactly what I'm saying. It's not an F you. I'm gonna put Jar Jar in wherever I want. It's totally a sense of humor, and that's what I think that wink and nod in Attack of the Clones was. It was like, yeah, we know you don't like this character. He's here, but he's not gonna do much, so don't worry. You know?
Yeah. And again, if you look at kind of the strategy of Jar Jar, like you have this, as Tiki kind of went into, again, he starts as a light character, gets grim over the thing to reflect the end point of our three movies, which again, Jar Jar does have
does kind of like that arc does happen.
Yes, I mean, that justifies, I'm just saying that by doing that, you justify why Jar Jar would be integral in movies, and that's why he would be kept around, because, you know, if Lucas was trying to please fans, he'd be like, well, then I get rid of Jar Jar, which he didn't, because he had
I've got to be honest, Dragon. If we saw like an old Jar Jar as the sad circus performer in a new Star Wars movie, I would be down for that.
Right.
Anyway,
but you see what I'm saying, though, right?
For the love of God, yes, but for the love of God, let's transition. We've been on the prequels for like an hour.
Right.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut your point short, man. It's just like this is going to turn into a 3-hour podcast.
Anyway, let's get to the. Speaking of Jar Jar, let's get to the infamy, the exhibit H. Right.
And we're going to kind of just lump these two together in a way, the infamy and the hypocrisy, Dragon, if you don't mind, just for the sake of time.
All right. So, of course, as you can see with the image that is presented before us, we're kind of getting into the, not only just the parodies of Lucas, but also kind of the crystal skull of it all. So this is sort of the bad rep that George Lucas gets because of all the prequel stuff we went over in great detail. You know, he gets a bad rep because of the infamy of stuff people are crazy about in the prequels and with the alterations and everything. It's assumed that all the failings of anything not I'm looking at the image, it's not Razor Laser, but you know with Crystal Skull, of course, like anything wrong with that movie, it's instantly on Lucas' head, which of course, I mean, he does bear some blame on that, but of course, Spielberg wasn't.
Well, I think in that specific instance, there's a lot of evidence to point towards George Lucas being the problem.
There is. I mean,
that's a bad example to go to defend George Lucas. I'm just saying.
Well, I'm just showing you, like, even with examples like that, again, it's just kind of an instant go-to of, like, you know, again, this is not helping George's case, but still, like, the bad rap is just kind of incurable at this point.
Right. It's kind of like an M. Night Shyamalan in a way, although George Lucas never really had the artistic comeback that M. Night Shyamalan is experiencing, but right. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like post prequels, George Lucas was a joke, much like M. Night Shyamalan. Of course, Red Tails. People still make jokes about Red Tails, you know?
And, you know, here the question's kind of brought about, you know, this not being fair to Lucas, you got a question like, did all the backlash and the bruise, which I believe you brought up, is that is it discouraging Lucas venturing into other projects aside from stuff like
Oh,
Red
and I
Dead?
absolutely think the backlash of the prequels kind of destroyed the man in a way. I really do. I think it hurt him on a very, very deep personal level.
And again, we're building sympathy for Lucas with that, and that's again just kind of tracking kind of where we're at with the guy here. And again, it's like where it comes for a Logan comparison here. It's like his strength is poisoning him. That's kind of what's what's going on with Lucas right now. His strength of
I never thought I compared Logan to Lucas, but yeah, I can see that.
That would be another movie I'd love to see. Just kind of the aging George Lucas looking back on it all and going on a very very kind of Western.
Another John Lee Hancock project, perhaps.
I'm down for it. I don't know who else is. I'm down for it. But you see what I mean, though. Seriously, though, it's like his strength is poison. Like his iconography of you created stars, you did all this stuff, and now he's like, as we see before, there are jokes made about him. There's all the South Park parodies, which are don't get me wrong, are. Well, I'm not just saying South. I'm not trying to critique South, but I'm just saying generally. Let's face it, on the nose of what happens in certain episodes at Lucas. He's done some horrible, atrocious things to Indiana Jones. I'm not talking about the.
You don't even know, Dragon. You do not even know, because I'm sure you don't have the stomach to actually watch the clips, right?
Well, I'm just saying it. Let's just say it's worse than a rubber glove.
It gets more graphic than you could probably even picture in your head.
It's a lot worse than Indiana Jones's prostate exam, let's say. But
well, if it isn't Indiana Jones, you're looking tender today, Indy.
You see what I mean, though? Interpretations like that are quite, are quite unsavory. And you got to feel bad for Lucas at that point. Again, he's just become kind of this negative parody of himself. Again, where
it's interesting that we go back to, Dragon. You're right. But we tie this back to an older episode of South Park. This episode was specifically kind of around the time that Spielberg actually released the special edition of E.T., and there were a lot of jokes about and the guns have been replaced by walkie-talkies.
Yeah.
But point being, like I said, the crux of this particular episode is the hypothetical scenario of George Lucas altering Raiders, altering the actual what he's got in his hand is supposed to be the
actual film, the original negative.
Right, the negative, right. So I feel like this brings us kind of into the hypocrisy of it all of George Lucas is just a very conflicted individual, and I feel like this episode, Dragon, of course, stay away from the Indiana Jones rape episode because it gets very graphic. But I would actually recommend this episode to you, Dragon. I'm not quite sure what it's called. I can get that info for you later, but this is a very well done episode, kind of exploring the dynamic that Lucas and Spielberg have with each other. Spielberg is also a character in the episode, and it kind of shows the poisonous influence that Lucas has on Spielberg to a certain extent. But it also very much goes into the the sensitive side of Lucas and the whole this is my art and people are just criticizing me for it and tearing me apart for it, and I just want to express these movies in the way that I want to.
Exactly. Again, kind of going back to the Modesto film students. Mm-hmm. And so just looking at this, just kind of branching and kind of as the South Park children, as the South Park children kind of go into
they're technically fourth graders.
as these characters go into, I remember from just the clips based from the film that they use this. They mentioned they speak of the colorization that
right.
So this would be a point of just kind of breaching into 2 points of hypocrisy.
Which, by the way, is something that South Park does really well. Is in general, when they tackle pop culture subjects like this, they'll directly call out hypocrisy like this.
Well, I remember that South Park, from what I've heard on Family Guy commentaries, they have back when Family Guy was good. Is that South Park had a tremendous they have a tremendous turnaround. Basically, they can use the news cycle very quickly. That's kind of.
You got to keep in mind that just this past election, South Park basically had an episode ready to go where Hillary won, but then, whoops! Okay, we have to go back and rewrite that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Really? That happened?
No, I'm not kidding you. Yeah, they had a whole episode in the can, and then they had to go back within I think 24 to 48 hours and restructure the whole thing.
With he who shall not be named. Okay.
Yes, exactly. I'm dancing around the issue here, but
anyway, back to this. So again, you're right. Yeah, you get good turnaround. So speaking of the colorization, we have kind of 2 major points of hypocrisy with George Lucas, and him kind of going back on stuff. I think it's on the breakdown here. It's kind of tracking the man into kind of tracking the trial of the guy here. So the colorization shows kind of this divide between kind of the George Lucas then and the George Lucas now. Kind of I think it's a difference in filmmaker versus hypocrisy. Personally, I feel it's that again he's a different guy now, which. He's at a different point in his life, and you had a question: is that hypocrisy? Is that
like I said, I think the hypocrisy kind of more comes from the fan backlash than anything else, and him being overly protective of his movies. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but you see what I mean. Though? I think it's kind of a question of like, is it hypocrisy? But or is it an evolution? Or is he changed? Again, just kind of evolved, and he's kind of like, well, I don't feel that way anymore. But he never just kind of put that in writing. Like, I mean,
honestly, I think with like a lot of stuff we're talking about, it's very much a gray area where I do think there is an inarguable. It's inarguable, Dragon, that I think there is a level of hypocrisy at play here because of the him being a very, very avid, outspoken person against the colorization of films to essentially going from that to barring. I think the big issue here with that, Dragon, is less so anything that he did with the prequels and more just, of course, the issue of him not wanting the original trilogy to get out to the public anymore.
Yeah,
I think in that issue, there very much is hypocrisy, but I feel like the hypocrisy is, like I said, it's very much fueled by his hurt feelings and his overprotectiveness over the thing that he made. You know what I mean? And his desire to show people the most complete version of it that he could possibly do.
Right. It's like like at one point, like he's the Modesto film student that wouldn't touch the films, wouldn't dream of touching or changing these classic films. And it's you got to wonder if it's the corporate success, that will try for the delusion, kind of the sorry, not I was going to say delusion of an illusion. Basically, try for the illusion that God can't bleed in this kind of this perpetual denial and kind of and self-consciousness about he's trying to erase. He's trying to pretend like it didn't have. So these like kind of the Holocaust Star Wars denier comparison to the film. It's kind of like that. It's kind of like he's denying that. No. It's like basically it feels less denial. Feels more like he's shrugging off. Like there were original films, but don't watch those. We'll watch the new stuff. Watch the new stuff we're putting out. It's all better and stuff.
Right.
And that's what it feels like. Again, but at the same time, you got to imagine, like, why wouldn't he just allow the originals to be?
And of course, Spielberg had it right, because we all know Spielberg, when he released the whatever it was, the 20th anniversary, I think it was, of E.T. And
look at Blade Runner. It's like God knows, like there's like 4 versions of Blade Runner everyone could pick from.
But you know what I mean? Like when Spielberg released that anniversary edition of E.T., he had both a disc with the special edition on it and a disc with the regular edition on it, the original version.
Yeah, but again, it seems like if it's like he's covering up either because again he's deluded, or because again he just feels so self-conscious about it. He just doesn't want to be that. He doesn't want to feel that vulnerable like he did with the prequels again.
Sure.
Well, I'm saying he doesn't want to. You know what I mean? It's kind of he doesn't want to feel that. You feel that vulnerable. So,
any other points to hit on with that?
Let me think. I have a comparison here. I have one other point to make. So comparison is that it's the way George Lucas kind of goes back, kind of like really kind of going back on the seeming, because again, it seems very like a hypocritical kind of comment about his films, what his films versus the colorization was versus he should have the right to alter his films. Essentially, what the hypocrisy is, just to make sure we kind of state it somewhat. It's kind of like, tell me if this feels offensive or not, because I don't think it is, but I'm just trying to be blunt with it. It's like judging someone we love. It's like judging someone you love in life who has like a loved one with obsessive compulsive disorder. He can't help it, and it will never necessarily get better.
I hear you.
It will never get better, and at the same time, you can't fault him for it. My point is, you build sympathy for. It's like we build sympathy with George Lucas, because he is in his own trapping. He's stuck. He's been sucked.
Let's not forget all the positive things that this documentary brings to the forefront about like how. Just how the fan community, in spite of all the backlash, how he's still with open arms, lets people use sound, like sound effects and music and stuff like that for the fan films. With deny it that he just leaves it as a public archive. You know what I mean?
Exactly, because again, he still does does love the fans, and he still is an advocate of young filmmakers. So again, he's not completely cut off to the world. And before I kind of wrap up on the point, let me also just throw in there because I didn't mention the Star Wars Holiday Special. Pretty much just lumps into the whole. It's a better example of the Star Wars denier comments. Pretty much again that to me is just kind of that's the. It's like Lucas is faced with the one fact that while the prequels are debatable, people are still debating about the prequels. We always debate about the prequels. The one thing that is not
Howard the Duck more than he defends the Star Wars Holiday Special.
Yeah, that's the point. Like basically, Star Wars Holiday Special is universally it's universally not good, and Lucas and it's the one thing it's eating away at Lucas, and this kind of fuels the OCD thing. It's just kind of good. This is the thing that eats away at Lucas that he has no control. The one thing he has no control over because it's available. It's on people can find it on YouTube. It's the one thing he just has no way of stopping. You know, like Avi Arad can stop the Fantastic Four thing, but eventually that came out too.
Right.
It's like it's like he just. It's just something that he has no control over.
Mm-hmm.
And just overall, again, just building back to the sympathies, kind of round things out here again, like because he is in his own trapping, it's kind of a bittersweet thing. Where he's just always perpetually trapped. He presents himself as much as George Lucas presents himself as the nice, humble filmmaker, with a wealth of making of stories, which we love. He may anytime he may make a small joke or a comment purely because of the infamy or taste over like whether you like the prequels or not. There's always going to be this unfair amount of scrutiny, and you feel for the guy. Like no matter what he does, there's always going to be George Lucas said this. He was like a minor joker saying, "Oh, I like the weather today." George Lucas said this. You see what I mean, though? He's just because of all this infamy and all this kind of all the debates on George Lucas, yay or nay. There for the longest time, he had to deal with that. Like anytime he goes, like the way the film opens, it opens with him going on the Jon Stewart show. He's just bombarded with like Star Wars questions.
Oh, that's a really effective opening, by the way.
It is.
It just shows George Lucas like just completely out of his element, just like, oh god, like he has no idea what to say, and you can see it on his face.
And if you look at it on a rewatch, you look at like kind of a sadder context of like, oh, poor again. After all he's been through, it's like again he's there to talk about a book that's not about Star Wars, or at least I don't know if it's not about Star Wars. His point is he's there to talk about a book, and it's nothing but he's just completely caught off guard. And again, it's like whatever he says, it's almost like this. It's like whatever he says next is going to be talked about. It's going to be waiting on. Like throughout the film, like he makes jokes about I'm the George with the capital G, or like the George, a W in the middle, basically. I have a W in mind. Again, he's making a joke, but people look at it as like, oh god, he's comparing himself to another controversial figure. That's the way you look at it. So that's
like
the trapping.
Can't have a sense of humor, or else people just go crazy.
It's like the most human filmmaker who made Star Wars, and you rooted for the guy to get the first one complete, and now he's in a place where he's so successful and so kind of controversial at the same time. It's like he can't be humble anymore. Not humble. I mean, he can't be human anymore. The man who started off as human can no longer be human. Very much like the Darth Vader parallel.
I can't wait to be human again.
But
sorry.
Very much like the Darth Vader parallel. Again, he starts off as a human guy. Now he's more machine than man. He's more artificial than he is human. Okay.
Nice show transition.
Yes, well, it's really down. Let's bring some hope into it all. Let's get to exhibit.
A new hope, perhaps.
Yes.
This is exhibit A, B, C, D, E, H, I. Exhibit I.
The eyes have it. Okay.
I swear to God, folks, my parents taught me the alphabet. Anyways, so I don't. To tell you the truth, Greg, you should kind of take the lead on this because I'm not really sure how far you want to go between this and then the sequel. Like, I feel like the two kind of like connect to each other a lot.
I think we'll start off with the Vader comparison here. Let's kind of hammer it on kind of like the Vader comparison. Just kind of like so. I think the fact is, as it's been pointed out, it's not a super clever thing to point out, but it's a very accurate thing to point out. It's a very trippy thing to point out that he did go the path of the Vader. Good and humble intent. Didn't know he was going down kind of this somewhat hypocritical. More unfortunate than hypocritical. The unfortunate path that he has gone down, again, starting off in just kind of the highest of highs, and just kind of going off into he went so high he went past the moon into the darkness. Sure. It's this. this iconic. It's like, think about this. He goes down just looking at the parallel of Anakin Skywalker again. Nice kid, goes down an unfortunate path. He becomes super iconic. That being when he becomes Vader, super iconic. Everyone knows Vader. And deep down, under the infamy, under the conflicted views, he's still a guy who was Joseph Campbell's finest student, who likes movies, cars, and making things, just in general making things, translating mythology to for the next generation. Of course, I want to hammer on my favorite part of the film. It's probably my favorite part of the film, just that comparison, this beautiful comparison about what George Lucas is of. Basically, a more eloquent way of what I just kind of said there is, he's a bloated billionaire who's I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So, basically the bloated billionaire who deep down is his, basically we kind of look at him as like one of those Russian nesting dolls. Essentially, what the thing is like, he's this bloated. It's well animated. It's
I'm
going to
like an onion dragon. I have so many layers to me. Shrek's right. Oh, CGI.
Why are you on such a Shrek kick lately?
I don't know. Look, the onion is a good gag, okay? The onion is a very versatile gag. You can bring it up in a lot of different circumstances, all right?
Anyway, so we have the bloated, ruining my quote, man. So
Okay,
we have
I'm sorry. Go
the
ahead.
bloated billionaire who underneath is an idealistic hippie, who underneath is the kind of the outsider kid in his garage putting together motors, all inside this Death Star corporation that at the end of the day, all of them fighting out. You're gonna hope that kid comes out of it okay. And again, that's essentially that's what Lucas is. Deep down, he's still that filmmaker. At the same time, though, he's all these other things.
Yeah, it's very, like I said, Dragon, the documentary's got this very fascinating perspective of kind of telling the story. And you're right, absolutely kind of hammering in the Darth Vader point, like his journey mirroring Darth Vader and everything like that. And at the end of the day, you really do feel for this guy, because this guy kind of like, he lost his way somewhere along the road, and the fan backlash, Dragon, like I said, in spite of the fact that he's never lost faith in the fans lost faith in him. I think that's a big tragedy in it. You know what I mean?
It is. And at the same time, though, I think just the way things worked out now would be that, he's had his Vader kind of burning on the pyre moment, so he has kind of ascended into the Force. He's now a Force ghost.
Sure.
He is. And what it boils down with Luke is that we all, there's always a love-hate something going on with Lucas. Now it's more than the love, because now we have less reasons to hate him. But again, it's like now
let's be honest, man. The man fucking created modern day storytelling.
I'm saying in the grand scheme it'd be ridiculous to hate him. I'm just addressing kind of the. Sure. I don't feel that way. I'm just saying that everyone has like a love-hate. They lose. Basically, a love-disdain thing. Like, I'm not crazy about the choices he's made, but again, the love's always going to trump the day, and that's the formula the movie follows too. That at the end of the day, again, we end on hope. We end on hope for a very important reason. And I think that they were kind of criticized by some foreign film festivals. Like, they like the down endings, and it was mentioned that why'd you have to end on hope? And again, they champion the hope ending, and I think that was a very smart choice on the filmmaker's part.
I do too, and honestly, because it's Star Wars, man. Come on, it ties together, right? Thematically, you got to go with that angle.
And of course, they address the whole kind of the gag that does give him a really cool song in the movie, but still at the same time, it's a yes.
No, I'm just saying the gag. Yeah.
Yes, the gag. Of course, the George Lucas raped my child. The song. And of course, the straightforward answer is no. He didn't violate it. He did not violate our child.
One of my favorite quotes in the movie is like, like if some metaphorical version of George Lucas met up with some metaphorical version of my childhood, it would be the most sweet and consensual lovemaking possible.
Yeah, I gotta tell you, that sounds kind of nice.
I love that quote.
It's like this: he didn't violate it, but he did tinker with it. He did make it. He didn't make an inferior backstory. Let's face it, he made an inferior backstory, but the whole is still intact.
Sure.
It's still intact. We're all happy, and we need, and the message with all that is like, we need to look in, while going backwards backfire. We need to look toward the future if there's one to be had. Again, at this time, we did not know there was one to be had, but you know what I mean. If there was one to be had, you have to look forward. And of course, we have a great line by someone saying, I wonder if his son's going to kill him, make his ghost say, "I'm sorry."
Well, you know what? It's interesting. I'll lead that with the talk of the sequel, but I do think Lucas outwardly apologizing for the prequels. I've said this before, and I'll say it again, Dragon. That would basically be like the geek culture equivalent of the Frost Nixon.
I know you were gonna. I had that in one of my. We'll get there. We'll get there.
Okay.
Oh boy, we'll get there. We'll get there.
All right.
Put a pin in. Let's see. I want to make sure we get anything else.
Yeah. Can we jump ahead a little bit to Celebration? Because I feel like that moment that happened this year at Celebration is a good place to end on with the hope theme.
Well, I want to make sure I have a few things I want to address before we get there. Can I build to it a little?
Yeah, but just again, we're kind of going a little long on this, so quickly.
Okay. Well, I love how Coppola, the way they use Francis Ford Coppola, he was essentially Lucas's Lou Ferrigno that we had
That's a perfect comparison, yeah.
In I Am Your Father, exactly. We use archival footage of Coppola because Coppola, one of Lucas's friends, and again, he's always his champion, saying nothing's going to compare to the filmmaker that George Lucas is, the filmmaker he knew.
Of course.
Yeah. Anyway, so in the end of the day, George Lucas, we love hate him, and we got everyone to everyone's still talking about Star Wars, good or bad. It's kind of the message of the film in the end. It's like everyone, whether it's like love or hate for him or just for the descent of Star Wars, is always like the prequels and the original, or the all the stuff we talk about in this documentary. It's still talked about. In Star Wars, good or bad, it still has an impact, and that's all because of Lucas and the crazy ride that he's taking us on, the ups and downs. It's still, I just love that it boils down with the hope. We have like these sweet, kind of ridiculous but sweet, really great moments where it's like the "We love you, Uncle George" moment. That's really it's.
Right.
It's silly, but it's coming from a sweet place. Of course, the Reverend, I think he's a Reverend of some sort of, maybe a fictional church or something. The point is, the guy in the robes with the high voice is singing at the end, the whole 3.5, and we eventually got 3.9. So it's all kind of self fulfills.
Okay, so I think I'm going to go ahead and transition here, and we'll get into the Celebration moment as we talk about the sequel. But let's talk about the sequel, Dragon, and what a good poster this is. This isn't official, is it?
Well, to be honest, there's unfortunately only like a website or two that talks about the sequel being made. So unfortunately, I believe this is
one of those things where it's like we'd love it to happen, and they said they want to do it, but it's one of the things like
they claim to have been working on it since 2014. So that's
it's also one of the projects that I'm kind of worried about, in terms of like, is it actually going to see the light of day?
Yeah,
I would love it to.
Well, I have ideas for like 2 and 3.
For 2 and 3. Okay. Well, can we focus on the 2 here?
I know. I'm just gonna briefly. You're gonna love 3. 3 is the one that kind of hits upon some of the stuff you're bringing up. But okay, seriously though. So, but yeah, sequel. They've talked about. They said in 2014 we're gonna make it. And this, I believe, this is fan made. Initially, I thought it was real, but I think it's actually fan made because again, we can't get any.
It'd be a great poster, though.
It would be. It's excellent. Because again, it's the kind of in the Jake Lloyd pose from the Blu-ray set. So, again, first and foremost, I hope it's still being made. Again, I hope that they're taking their time and waiting.
Like John Schnepp kind of took his time with, with the Death of Superman Lives. Like that went like almost a year and a half, 2 years over his initial production schedule, but it very much paid off.
My hope is that they waited for Force Awakens to come in. That's why it's taken so long. So basically, the year afterwards, they've been making in 2016, and then they'll come out. If not this year, then next year. I think if we don't get it by 2018, I don't think we're getting it. That's honestly what I'm feeling.
Right.
Otherwise, again, unfortunately, I think it's going to be good. But anyway, so in general, what they should do too. I've always had this idea in mind for a sequel. I think 2 should again. I definitely do think they should do a trilogy. They have 3 very set stories. They did the first one, and I think they should change up the style. I don't think they should just entirely go the same route of we have all we don't need the
films and everything.
As great as that was, I don't think they need that going forward. I think they've established.
I kind of agree.
I think Lucas is enough of a strong character.
I feel like they should do almost kind of like adapt sort of the I Am Your Father thing of like doing the artwork and kind of like the You know what I mean? Something more to that approach.
I was thinking archival footage, but I think like basically in the line of Waking Sleep Beauty, where we have archival footage and we don't see the actual Lucas, but we have like all the stuff that's been recorded.
Okay, right,
Like
sure.
we don't have a frame of the actual Lucas talking, but it's like I mean of Lucas in the modern year whenever it comes out talking.
Uh-huh.
Points we just get all the like there'd be talk of Lucas, but we wouldn't have like kind of the
building up the mystique of the man.
Yeah, so basically, my crux of it here is be like, we have like a good dark middle chapter here. A good again, this like we have like a bittersweet quality to the film, which again is basically the premise of the film. They've said is this is all the Disney Lucas stuff. This is like Disney selling Lucasfilm, which in itself sounds like a fascinating story. Which again sounds like definitely well
I
for a
imagine
sequel.
the big dramatic crux of that would be like, of course, the moment that we hear about in interviews of Lucas like presenting his story ideas and Disney essentially tossing them out.
And I was watching this before we went on. There actually is a very interesting clip of Kathleen Kennedy. Basically, Lucas saying he would avail his services to Kathleen Kennedy, and of course, that's kind of a bittersweet thing because, of course, they don't want his services.
Sure.
It's basically a big kind of tragic moment for Lucas, where he's saying, "Oh yeah, I mean, I'd love to be a part of it."
But of course, Lucas wanted to populate episode 7 with a bunch of teenagers, so I think it's a good thing that he didn't have his hands in it.
I'm just saying that's kind of the bittersweet. It's kind of the Ed Wood quality. The guy wants to kind of tell his thing, but it's just no one really wants it.
Of course.
So I would feel that in this, I'm just gonna give like the 3-act breakdown again. Just the not going through like a whole premise, but
yeah, go ahead.
Okay, opening like first act would be like a little opening recapping the complex nature, basically recapping the first film, basically the complex nature of the relationship with Lucas and Star Wars. How there was backlash in between, Force Awakens and kind of the prequels wrapping up.
Sure.
It's kind of like just kind of the ending, kind of the build.
Just maybe sort of like highlight Lucas sort of like in exile, like sort of like
Yeah, just kind of like maybe address Star Tours a little bit because we really didn't address that too much. I'm saying it's kind of the in between stuff.
Also, maybe address the bizarre like enigma that is the Clone Wars film.
You mean the animated one?
Yes, the animated one that inexplicably went to theaters for some weird reason.
I'm not less that, but seriously, look at this though. I think you'd appreciate this. Seriously, our opening is with the opening. Not only it reestablishes kind of the dynamic with Lucas, but it also we could introduce it with while we're kind of catching up on Lucas, we would also address the Star Tours thing, which would seed in Disney for the end.
Okay, one thing you have to keep in mind with. I'm sorry. One thing you have to keep in mind with Star Tours is that what you could do is you could have the first film, the film start with Star Tours: The Adventure Continues, which is essentially like the last thing that Lucas was involved in before he officially handed the rights off to Disney. Of course, that was very much a Disney property, but that used a lot of prequel iconography and stuff like that. So,
that's fair. I'm thinking like I'm saying definitely use that, but let's save that for the third act. I'm saying the first act is like think about this. First act is that shot we used earlier where it's the christening. It's the laser. It's the lightsaber cutting the ribbon. It just kind of seeds it in there. Okay, Disney's kind of a presence in Lucas' life, and we just kind of recapture the crux of the film without the little fan film edits here and there. Middle big center of the film is Lucas making the realization that making the decision to sell Star Wars after like the backlash of Act 1. Act 3 is the kind of the regret and fear over the future. It could either go one of two ways: either the regret and fear over the future of Star Wars, and with kind of a bittersweet yet hopeful note, with again the Star Tours ending, perhaps of the last thing he worked on. With that, or again, you could depending how much they've shot. That's the thing. That's the question. Like if Force Awakens would factor into it or not. Again, the third act could also could be Lucas addressing his views on Force Awakens, like all that controversy of what his take on Force Awakens would be, in the Kathleen Kennedy thing I brought up. So again, that to me is a sequel. And third one again is barely concept, but it's basically this.
I'm curious.
So again, 2 is kind of our dark, bittersweet one of like you're really feeling for Lucas. Again, kind of the man who built all this. He's giving it away because of and the fans factored into that decision a great deal. But again, maybe there's a story we don't know that could be explored upon. Again, that's a story that really is worth telling. So this one would be kind of the ultimate payoff to all of these films.
Sure.
So we return. We actually meet George Lucas. For the premise of the film is we actually have an actual interview with George Lucas after episode
So
9
is this
comes out.
basically going to be the Frost Nixon?
This is the Frost Nixon. Yes,
Okay.
it's
Okay.
broadly.
That's what I
This
thought
would
about
be
the prequel Dragon, but yeah.
this would be after episode 9 comes out. This would be after episode 9 comes out.
Oh,
Like
after episode 9. Okay, I like it. I like that timeline. Okay.
this is after episode 9, and presumably again Lucas. Again, as we saw, we're on good terms. Either you end 2 with like that the celebration thing, or again maybe we start off a celebration to establish okay what terms we're on here. The point is, the Act 1 kind of builds that one second. Builds. Maybe it builds the plan for kind of it builds the plan for the George Lucas interview.
Sure.
Act 2 is Act 2 would be the reaction to the new trilogy versus the original trilogy. Seeing like maybe again now all 3 films are at just kind of measuring kind of like the new work versus kind of what George Lucas kind of and everyone did with it. Just kind of look again kind of past and present. So we're again building to the interview. We haven't seen them yet. We're all building to it.
Mm-hmm.
And then right. Then Act 3 would probably be of course build to the actual interview with him, and I would imagine like it would be kind of a it would probably be the kind of like the best description I have would be like a positive kind of like post divorce vibe of like, well, I separated myself from him. I'm imagining it'd be like kind of be end on a good note with Lucas.
Sure. Okay, is that it?
Yeah, you just end on like kind of what a ride George Lucas made happen with all this, and that'd be kind of like the fun scene of like like maybe have George Lucas address the filmmaker of like, oh, you took some shots at me, but it's all in good fun, that sort of thing.
So Dragon, that's some really good ideas there. Definitely, like I said, I'm crossing my fingers that the actual film even gets made. But the one thing that I have to add to that, Dragon, because you very eloquently laid out a lot of good ideas there, but I definitely think that the end of the second film that we kind of teased at in Celebration, where Hayden Christensen and George Lucas are welcomed on stage and just do a standing ovation and open arms and just like, yes, you are as much of a part of Star Wars as anything else. We welcome you. We embrace you. Thank you. You know what I mean?
Either we talked about this on the record or not, but I remember we brought this up that this would have been like a decent thing to work into People versus George Lucas.
I'm pretty sure it was off the record, but yeah, I'm sure we brought it up. Yeah.
Yeah, you're right, though. That would be the perfect way to end it. I'm saying, given all this time we've given to it, yeah, it would be perfect to end it on that note again. Just kind of, at least, again, ending on it's bittersweet, but again, it has like a sweetness at the end of it.
All right, so Dragon, we have gone through all the exhibits. I think. Do you think it's finally time to make a verdict?
Yes, the jury has come back, and it's time to.
This has been a journey, man. This has been a marathon of podcasting tonight. But let's get
now, Tiki, think about it. The man's life. Well, not really his life. The man's reputation is in your hands. So it's time to give a verdict. So let me list the charges first.
Okay. May I? I'm excited to hear this. Go ahead.
Here's what I've kind of seemingly just going through the evidence. What a few. Majority of the charges are against Lucas. Perjury, forgery, profiteering, false advertising,
oh God,
neglect,
oh, man.
And overall war crimes.
War crimes? Oh, Jesus.
Star Wars crimes.
I'm like, wow, that escalated quickly.
Just general war crimes. It's kind of the general Star.
Okay.
Get it? So, crimes against Star Wars.
I mean, I think throughout this whole conversation, I've been a little bit more lenient about some of the flaws, like the prequels. I very much defended Phantom Menace, so. I'm going to be the easy jury member, Dragon. It's it's late, so I'm just going to say he's not guilty. I think the People versus George Lucas does a great job. It kind of is our final thoughts here, mixed in with our verdict. I think the movie does a great job of laying out that evidence, like you said, laying out those verdicts, laying out the convictions. But I also think it does a good job of explaining Lucas's side of the story, which is honestly, Dragon, like you said, if Mark Hamill just pass this down based on the title, it'd be understandable, but it's also
I think
Like,
it would have. I
essentially,
think it
like,
actually would have liked it because it actually kind of showed both
like
sides.
basically I understand him not wanting to be in the movie, but I just hope that he's seen the film and kind of like, like acknowledges that it's not like this slander on Lucas that he kind of probably thought it was. Because I really do think it's a very multi-layered look at the man, both from the fan perspective of him, and also kind of like, creating the narrative of his life and how, of course, it's all very speculative until we can actually get that coveted Frost Nixon-esque interview with him. But just kind of speculating on how he felt about it, what his motives are, and everything. And I gotta say, Dragon, I think at the end of the day, he's more of just an artist who got mixed up and overwhelmed. And for that reason, I'm going to lay down the not guilty verdict.
Well, for me, it's going to be somewhat of the OJ verdict, but I'm going to swing wild here. I'm going to say not guilty as well.
Okay.
Because look, end of the day, for all the charges, I mean, again, as we've kind of gone through, I think he's innocent of all the charges. Otherwise, would have stuck him at least one of them. But no, I mean, again, false advertising. Well, people, again, the intention of how it's perceived. That's not false advertising. He's advertising it as is. Neglect. Well, I mean, yeah, we have kind of some things have been kind of left by the wayside, sure. But again, he still cares about it. Star Wars is still kind of on his priorities list. So again, you can't necessarily neglect. Mm-hmm. General war crimes, it's kind of a broad category, so let's just say, let's let him off on that one. Perjury and forgery. Well, I'm just saying perjury in that he's lied about things. So again, technically he hasn't lied, but I'm saying these are all charges that are technically that he technically would have been reasonably accused of. But you know what? At the end of the day, it's like all had the best of intentions behind all of it. That's kind of where I'm coming down on all of it.
Sure.
I know, not super objective, but they don't pay me. I'm a jury member. So
we're lazy jurors. We're just kind of speaking with our hearts.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm sure, Tiki. If you saw OJ Made in America, you would appreciate this a lot more. I gotta tell you.
Believe me, Dragon, it's on my must list. Okay, I'm really looking for go ahead.
Anyway, so my final thought. I'm just saying that was my verdict. So my final thoughts. End of the day, the good outweighs the bad always. No matter what questionable stuff George Lucas has done, that's the fact you have to consider always. Again, he gave us all the good stuff. You got to let me go for the rest of it. He did all that. He gave us Star Wars, and again, Star Wars is shaped so much. We don't have Guardians of the Galaxy without Star Wars. Let's face it. We don't have the movie that exists as Guardians. I'm saying I don't think we get away with less creating Guardians of the Galaxy. More, we don't get Guardians of the Galaxy realized as a film without Star Wars. Let's face it. And it's a great personal and I believe fair view of George Lucas. It's informative. The only gripes I have is that we leave out a few things, like we leave out Red Letter. I mean, they're in it, I know, but I'm just saying Red Letter Media
has more of a presence because they are kind of like the de facto voices of the prequel crowd, I think.
That's what I'm saying. It's saying, it's like it's the short film they did is in it, but Plinkett himself, the guy, Mr. Plinkett, in no way appears like any.
How awesome would it be if they interviewed him as Plinkett?
That would have been amazing. But again, that's stuff we don't get. Also, Kevin Smith was left out, and I do feel that's a bit of a that's a missed opportunity to say the least.
I think that's less of a missed opportunity and more.
He is literally the easiest person to interview. Tiki. He will talk to anyone.
Why haven't we had him on our show yet? Then, if he's so easy to get a hold of.
He's
so easy to get a hold of, then send an email his way.
I mean, he's easy. If you approach him, he is easy to get a hold of. All right? If you walk up and approach him.
All right, fair enough.
You want to go to Jersey? Be my guest. Okay. West Jersey. You want to go to Los Angeles? You're closer. Do it.
Well, maybe I'll just stop in on a Hollywood Babylon recording when I'm in LA in October. Maybe I'll just do that, Mister.
I don't think you have the grapes for it, to be honest. I think you're gonna get up to the door. You're about to knock. I can't do it. Anyway, so, on the whole, great film. Again, it's very well done. Just make sure we talk about in the last moments here again. Just wonderful way of presenting a documentary. Again, I think it's a fair view. We get 2 positives, 2 negatives. It's quite an even kind of viewing of kind of like Lucas's career. Again, kind of it sandwiches itself quite nicely, and again, it's very very insightful view on Lucas, good and bad. And at the end, again, just you gotta love the guy.
Okay, well, folks, thanks for sticking with that with us. This ended up being a very in-depth conversation, very engaging, Dragon. I think we had a lot of good points, both of us. Hope I was able to keep up because you definitely made some very compelling arguments along the way. And thank you all for joining us on our May the 4th celebration. And until next time, Dragon, say it with me. May the 4th
be with
you. And George called me, and he was like, Hayden, I need you to be legless. And I was like, what?